Hello and welcome back to Class A People, where we've got the fantastic...
Living Sober with Lucy.
She's had to say it for me because I keep getting the words mixed up. Lucy was one of the first accounts that I followed when I was starting to get sober, and she also is obsessed with dogs like me, which is fantastic. In fact, she does it as a job. So I always tend to start with childhood.
Great.
Which I just think, get it out of the way.
Yeah, why not?
But it tends to sort of have a trickle effect into then kind of how we ended up where we got to. So
yeah, definitely.
But you have a different story to anyone who's been on the podcast yet, because you were not born in the UK.
No, so both my parents are English, and then they went to Cape Town on honeymoon in Cape Town, South Africa, and they just loved it. So they decided to stay. They had my sister and I there. So I spent my whole childhood in Cape Town, and then my sister's a couple of years older than me. Her name's Hannah as well.
Bigger.
I know. And she left home when she was, I think, 18, 19 years old. She moved to Mallorca to work on super yachts.
Casual.
I know. So it's been 10 years this year.
As in you left Cape Town to go to the UK?
Yeah, I left.
Now,
yeah.
So what, you do education there? And then you finished at 18 and then decided to come over to the UK and get a job?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So my whole childhood was spent in Cape Town, South Africa, basically, which was amazing because I love the outdoor lifestyle, and we definitely had that in South Africa. Like, you know, my parents were also very sociable people. Like, they loved entertaining. Like, every weekend they'd have a group of people around. My dad was very into sports, whether that was like golf or rugby.
Oh, so my dad loves golf.
Yeah, my dad is still obsessed with golf.
I'd honestly rather watch paint dry. I don't get it.
It is the most fucking boring thing. I can't.
I can't get on board with that.
And I don't know whether it's my eyesight or whatnot, but like I can't even like...
How do they follow the ball?
I have no idea.
I know.
I can't even follow it when I'm watching TV.
No.
So like I just there's no enjoyment there for me.
I agree.
At all. I've tried, like, yes, my husband loves golf and like he's obsessed.
So you've tried to kind of get on board with it?
I've really tried, but cricket and golf can't.
Same.
I cannot.
I agree.
I knew that I wanted to change an environment just because Cape Town, although there's like millions of people, it is a really small place. So if you know one person, you know another, like, you know, everyone just knows everyone, and I just felt really lonely, I think. I've always really struggled to make friends, like really, really struggled. And although I come across as like really loud and bubbly and like, hi, how are you? I really fucking struggle to talk to people. Yeah. Like, specifically people that are like similar age point. I can normally talk to adults.
That comes from, if your parents were like, mine were the same, the entertaining thing. So always like, I was never one of those children who was sent to bed and not allowed to be around the adults. And I think that when you're around that from a young age, you learn to speak to adults. And so you're quite mature with your language and the way you can communicate.
Yeah.
So then when you're growing up with children who are the same age as you, it's like, it's a bit more tricky.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, my parents were always entertaining, and, you know, we would never get sent to bed. We would always be up, you know, staying up late with the adults and, you know, being a part of those kind of adult conversations. So I could really communicate with adults, but I really struggled to make friends with people my age.
What were you like growing up? Were you quite, like, what do you put that down to, the reason why you found it hard to make friends?
I don't know. I think it's something that I'm still trying to unpick, but I think one of the biggest causes or reasons for that behavior is not feeling comfortable in my own skin and feeling like I wasn't like ever cool enough, or like not knowing what to say or like how to be friends. Like, don't get me wrong, I did have like, you know, a couple of childhood friends growing up, but I did move schools, and I moved schools a couple of times, and that really had a big effect on...
I kind of unpicking that situation as well a bit at the moment in therapy, and I put it down to like with ADHD, and if you get diagnosed maybe it would make more sense, but I'm very good at sort of, they call it a chameleon, so like changing who you are, interchanging, not completely like a different personality completely, but
it's like mirroring.
Yes, exactly that. And that on top of masking is a pretty dangerous place to get to.
Oh yeah, girl. Yeah, I've done all the research, so like I understand what you're saying.
And I think that because I was really badly bullied from 7 to 13.
Fuck, I'm sorry.
When I talk about that, though, it's like the work I've done now. It's like, God, no, that really was bad. Like, it was bad, And when I got to my next school, I didn't ever want to be a bully, but I had such a resting bitch face. I was like, I'm never going through that again. And I then got judged off that. So then, but I was intimidating. Like I was so stern that I probably came across as a hard ass bitch.
Like really intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people didn't want to interact with me because I was quite confident. And again, like, so I gone from sort of being depleted and sad and like the most unpopular person at school, then kind of not being popular, but just people being scared of you. So that was another version. Then I just carried that all the way through my 20s and then met drinking drugs and just was a party girl. Yeah. I was like, it'd be really great to meet myself one day.
I know. No, I totally get that. And I think it's quite interesting now because I've started doing like a bit of inner child work and oh yeah, girl, I've been unboxing that fucking trauma.
You can't reach that inner child in active addiction. I used to have therapy and she'd be like, she'd talk to you about it. I'd be like, shut up.
Absolutely not.
And then don't even mention the teenage one.
Oh yeah, no. That's going to take a while to unpack, 100%.
Yeah, and one thing at a time, please, Mrs. Therapist.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Sarah, please, but no.
Bethany, not today. Not today. Okay, we'll do the adult. No, not interested in that one either.
No.
Okay, so how are you finding that?
Interesting. I find it very like emotional, but I think it's really healthy for me to look back at myself almost and just reassure that little girl that it's okay to not feel okay in your own skin.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm still kind of like processing that almost.
I think like, how many years has it been that you felt like as comfortable as you have? Probably nowhere near the amount of time as you felt uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I would say probably only in the last year.
Right, so then I think about it because like we always want these quick fixes, but then I think that little girl actually needs nurturing all the way up until that point.
Yeah, honestly, there are so many years of different instances that I have to like work to replace, and it's interesting because like I still remember like being in primary school and not like I remember because I had like 2 friends, but unfortunately I think there was always going to be a time when they weren't in school for whatever reason, like if they were ill or whatnot, and then I would have no one to have my lunch with. And I specifically remember sitting down like outside in the playground, like on the stairs by myself having my lunch and feeling so like embarrassed and feeling like people are looking at me, people know that I don't have any friends. And then I would just end up either probably eating my lunch in the toilet or in the library, like a loner. And those feelings of like embarrassment and shame are something that I'm still kind of like working to undo.
I like something to do with school environment like that, or like if you're picked on, it's like this thing of why me? In my head, everyone's been through way worse than I have.
Yeah.
And that's what's got me to where I got to basically today. Like, because I never saw my trauma as worthy of the word trauma. Trauma, I feel like, is this big word. And I'm like,
it is a big word. And also, obviously, on social media nowadays, it gets thrown around so much.
Yeah.
And we're so much more exposed to it, that word specifically nowadays, especially if you're on the trauma side of TikTok. Like, the algorithm just doesn't stop
oh my
showing
God.
you.
It's like, it's so fascinating, right? Because in active addiction, I was getting all the drug memes, all the Ketflix and pills, all the fucking like, there's me 6 a.m. on trying to get more drugs in. Yay! When the dealer replies, all of those ones don't even come into my don't even enter my FYP now.
Yeah.
All I have is like trauma bonding, masking.
Yeah, all of these like different like psychological terms.
Yeah, I'm like, okay, right. Can we just have a break? Just send me a funny video. That would be great.
So bad. But yeah, I remember feeling like quite alone and
would you go home and speak to your parents about that, or your sister?
Yeah. I think my parents knew. Well, my mum knew that like I did struggle to like make friends. Like I never really had like a really big group of friends. But then that's what kind of like pushed me into spending more time with boys.
Yeah.
Because I found girls really like cliquey and gossipy, and I didn't like that, but I also didn't know, I couldn't pretend to be like that for some reason. Like don't get me wrong, there was definitely some masking going on in different environments, but I just couldn't figure out how to like infiltrate certain groups.
I never have ever been a part of a girl group, and I think when you're a girl growing up, like that's very normal. So like if you're not a part of one, you do feel like you've missed out.
Yeah.
But then in the same breath, if I ever was introduced to one, I found that they would all bitch about each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, this isn't what I see as a friend.
No.
But then I yearn for it because
Yeah.
I don't have it at like 13.
Yeah.
You know, 13 to 18, I had one best friend. Like that was it. And she is my partner in crime and we're still best friends this day. So I look at it now in a different way. I'm like, but I get that, which is like genuine, purest form of friendship.
Yeah.
But going through school was really hard because we just didn't get a look in. And now that was partly because I was intimidating, but it was also like, why don't I get to be, you know, then you get things like you see on Instagram, girls on girl group holidays and things like that.
Yeah, no, I never had
Never.
that. No. But I always wanted it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't quite figure out how to get it. And I think, especially like moving countries, that whole idea went out the fucking window. Like, you know, trying to have a girl group. Mind you, I've got one now and it's fucking insane and I'm so grateful for it. And honestly, like my friends are just like out of this world and I'm so grateful to have them.
But you're so grateful for that now because you've been through,
Yeah. Honestly,
I think
really
as well, like I would really struggle at school with like the loyalty side of things. Like when I was at school, if someone was horrible to my best friend, I've got this like, or just anyone who I liked, I would be very protective.
Yeah.
But if I didn't get that back in return, the injustice of that, you know,
taking it so serious.
All that would be is that they don't want to have drama or cause an argument, and I'd be like, well, you're not sticking up for me.
Yeah.
And that's a huge this side of ADHD.
It's like a break of loyalty almost.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's quite triggering for someone with ADHD. I believe like characteristics like loyalty and honesty are very important.
Yeah, and injustice.
So from all the way through primary school, I found it quite difficult. And then I did start to like have interactions with boys. So boys I found much easier to talk to and deal with because there was quite often no drama. And like,
I'll tell you how it is.
Yeah, and what you see is what you get a lot of the time with boys of that age. So I spent more time with boys, but then that didn't put me in good light with girls.
No.
Like girls didn't like that.
No.
And especially like, you know, as soon as the boobs came in and, you know, puberty hit, like, you know, obviously I wanted to spend more time with boys and vice versa. So I was starting to have like my first relationships almost with boys from a young age because I hit puberty probably a little bit too early, so I looked more interesting than any of the other girls at that stage.
Yeah.
And other girls also didn't like that, so that was
And I suppose if you haven't had the attention from girls and then you get it from boys, I used to find it quite infuriating though with guys, and it's understandable, especially when you're younger, but I just thought that girls could just be friends with boys. But young boys, you know.
No.
If they don't really understand that. And they're always going to read into it. Maybe
100%. Yeah.
And it's not that I would treat them any differently to girls, but for them, you've got to remember they're not used to girls really giving them attention at that age because they are in their girl groups, you know.
Yeah, I know. It's a weird dynamic.
Yeah.
It's really fucked up. But my sister and I ended up moving to a private school after being in like just a normal government school. When I was like 12 or 13. So the private school I went to was a nursery, primary school, and a high school.
Right. So you get people that have gone from to nursery to primary to main school.
Yeah, I mean,
so they're a clique.
Yeah, but also like the school was so small. So for like so many generations of kids, basically, there was probably like 300 kids in the whole school. So it was tiny. And being in that environment where you're forced to have to get along with everyone basically because you've got no one else, and if you piss one person off, you piss off the wrong person, like, you know, next thing you know your whole year hates you. And then it spreads throughout the whole school because everyone's siblings went there as well.
But did you already feel, because you were going in as someone who hadn't sort of gone up the ranks at the school, as in you hadn't done the nursery, the prep, do you already feel a bit different? Because I went into that first school that I got bullied at later than everybody else, and I just think you're just immediately like a bit of a target, especially if you look a certain ways. Like I was quite fat child and like low ponytail. I just a fucking prime target. Prime. Like if I watch me walking.
God, as soon as you said like fat child and low ponytail, I just got this picture in my head and I just can't. Yeah, sorry. Say no more.
Sometimes, yeah, do you know what I mean?
understand.
And sometimes when I'm doing that in a child work, and I just look, I mean, I was teed up for it.
Don't, honestly, I see pictures of myself in school and I'm thinking, fucking hell.
Do you know what I mean?
I've got no idea how
And
I
I'm
made it
like,
through.
you know, the sports pic, like the group sports pictures you have to do, and I've looked at them, and you know, you've got these girls, blonde, high ponytail, wispy
all
bits
in
the front.
flats. Yeah, no,
just,
girl.
you know, naturally tan blue eyes, and that's just me. Fucking the biggest balloon moon head and just a low pony. Why didn't anyone tell me that if you've got a round face, you don't wear a low
I
pony?
had no idea, because otherwise you look like an explorer from the 1800s. You know what I mean? Like a Columbus, you know, knocking about. And it's interesting because like I see so many young girls on TikTok now, and like some of them are like super young. We're talking like 14, 15.
Really terrifies me.
I know, and like they're doing their get readies with me, and then they're doing all of these dances.
It also really upsets me. Like, where's your Dream Up Mousse foundation lip phase?
I know.
Hello. Why is your face not a different colour to your neck?
Honestly,
they are like
my
perfection.
mishaps with bronzer used to be really bad.
That classic jawline.
Yeah. Like solid.
It is terrifying. That I.
Some of them really look so much older than what they are. It is quite terrifying.
Also, like, where's your embarrassing stage? Like,
I know, but they don't have it.
They don't
I'm
have
like,
it.
you're missing a rite of passage.
Also,
like,
you're not going to have any photos to look back on and laugh at yourself.
I know.
It's vital to human growth.
Oh, mate, honestly, I've got some absolute bangers on my phone. It's, yeah, it was not a look. But yeah, so we, my sister and I were at the school for quite some time. So we went there from, I can't remember, I think it was in year 5 or year 6 until year 10.
Was your sister popular?
She had the same problems and she got really fucking badly bullied, like really badly bullied, to the point where she would just go into school, not speak to a single soul, get her exams done and then go home. So she got really fucking bullied. But then the problem was that a lot of those girls in her year that were doing that bullying, their siblings were in my year, so I would catch the brunt of some of that as well.
That is what happened with me and my brother, but at the second school that I went to, the one where I was like intimidating and gave off this sort of facade, he then joined, and especially at schools like that, like the hierarchy, the just all of that stuff, he joined and he was just immediately picked on because he was my brother. And I think that's I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
You know, because there would be...
Have you spoken to him about that?
Yeah, there would be times where there was the first time that he came to me, like someone had been horrible to him, and he specifically said to me, please don't do anything with that. Well, I couldn't help myself. The injustice that somebody was being horrible to my brother.
Yeah.
Not thinking about the fact that that's going to have damaging repercussions for him. And I was in the dinner hall the next day and I went straight up to this kid, holding my tray, and was just very confrontational.
I thought you were going to say you whacked it.
No.
I was thinking, fuck it out. You go, girl. I would have done the same.
When it comes to my brother, at school I was very protective, and again it's this because I know what it's like to be bullied, but that looking back I can now see that was damaging. But at the time I was just like no, I can't bear the thought of him going through anything like what I went through. Subsequently he did, because of the way I was. So it's difficult. He actually ended up leaving that school and moved.
School. That's quite interesting.
But it's interesting, that whole trickle effect with schools. Like, if you have, if someone, you know, the bully, for example, the other people actually, like, who get on board with it, they're not actually necessarily bullies, but they're terrified of the bully. So already you're kind of introduced this power kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a weird power play dynamic thing, but then it does beg the question, like, what was going on in the bully's life at home?
So true.
It's that's where kind of all of these conversations lead back.
But you would never think about that when you're being bullied at that time.
No, absolutely not.
But I remember my mum coming home one day. This is when I think I was like maybe 19. And she'd run into my bully's mum in a car park, and it was kind of, how are you? How are you? And, oh, how's so and so getting on? And she said, oh, she's had a really tough time at the secondary school, and yeah, she's struggled with sort of like bullying, and she's got an eating disorder and things like this. And my mum came home and told me, and I went calm as a bitch. Now that was my attitude then.
I get it.
Right?
I get it. Yeah.
I've been fucking badly bullied, and it's affected me then going into the secondary school as well. But now I look back on that, I'm like, I found out that like she had 3 older brothers who were quite macho, I think, quite like
big bollocks.
Yeah. And also when we had that, you get like leavers books.
Yeah.
When we got to leave, she'd actually written an apology to me and hers, and she'd gone home and shown it to her dad, and her dad says, you're not doing that. You don't want to admit to something you haven't done. So already I'm like, well, you're clearly being grown up to believe that when you bully someone, you don't have to apologise for it. She knew that she'd done it. It's a shame.
Have you ever thought about like messaging her?
Okay. I have thought about it, yeah.
But you've never done it.
No, because I'm still sitting in that phase of like, you should fucking message me. But I did see her after a long time at someone's 18th, I think it was an 18th or a 21st, I can't remember which one. But at that school, I used to get called Viney, which is my surname. No one for years had then called me that. And I literally was standing there talking to somebody. Someone tapped at my shoulder and went, Viney. Honestly, my blood ran cold. I knew it was her.
Yeah. I can see that.
Clearly has a big still effect there.
Yeah.
Or did when I was 18. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, I do think about that. And then I think, no.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if I think the work I've now ended up doing is like, I do realise that she was basically a lot of the reason as to why a lot of shit went wrong. A lot of it. And that's not to like, it's just circumstantial. Those are the cards I got dealt.
Yeah.
And I'm not resentful, but at the same time, I'm like, I'd love to know what her
side of it was. Yeah, like what was actually going on for her at that time.
Yeah.
And I think it's really I think it is a testament to your personal growth to be able to actually take yourself out of the situation and start to be a little bit more open-minded, to start to wonder, well, actually, I wonder what was going on, on that side. And, I think things change when you can become more curious as opposed to resentful or any of those like really negative emotions, because holding on to that shit is so bad for
only
you.
damaging yourself.
Like it's still obviously quite like a sore subject almost, but it's understandable why, because it's led to so many other things. And if that hadn't happened, then who knows where you would be now. But then at the same time, look at where you are now.
Yeah, it's funny.
So you can't hate on the past.
No,
I mean, you can to some extent, but like
the thing that's interesting about us is like the word you use there is curiosity. Like I get this impression with you, like we're quite like interested in psychology and the brain.
I fucking love it.
Just like hyper focus the shit out of that.
I know.
It's like I'll find myself, especially now I'm sober, like if I'm at something like a wedding, you really realise like how little depth some people can have. And it's just fascinating. Like, oh, you're not an addict, but you really use that substance to accentuate yourself, be a version of yourself. And I'm so fascinated. I can sit and just people watch, like I just find
I love it. I absolutely love it. And quite interestingly, actually, when I was growing up, like something that myself, my mum and my sister would quite often do is go to like the local mall and we would just sit and people watch.
I did that with my mum, but apart from my problem was that I was so indiscreet. She went, Hannah, stop staring. I'm not.
I love that. And I think, my interest in like human psychology has really flourished in the last couple of years.
So you get through school with your sister.
Yeah. So
but then she leaves.
Yeah, she left. And then I remember just feeling like really unhappy, like really, really unhappy and really depressed. And maybe that was because I never did particularly well in school. Like I would only do well at the subjects I was actually interested in. So history and English, those are my 2 favorite subjects. But everyone else in my school was like a super high achiever, because the problem with being in such a small school is that there was nowhere to hide. And I just couldn't, like my brain just couldn't. I really wanted to. It wasn't a case of I was trying to be naughty or trying to, like actively not do well. It was just something in me just couldn't. It just couldn't actually study, or, you know, unless it was something that I was really interested in, my brain just would shut off, and it's physically impossible.
Did you have good English and history teachers that you like
I
connected?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah, my history teacher was fucking amazing.
I was literally with my friend Frankie last night, and she said to me, "You were away with the fairies." But even if, like history, for example, I'm not very good at it. But there was one teacher called Mr. Hargreaves, so animated, so. You walk in there and it was just like something, you say something funny, or I remember learning about Henry VIII and the wives and all of that, because you just made it so entertaining. And do you go into a chemistry lesson and I'll just be like,
oh, I think
turn on the Bunsen burner 15 times. That's about the only thing that made me.
Woohoo! I'm fucking around with the goggles. Yeah, why not?
I used to hate that though. Can't possibly look that uncool. Putting on those fucking jackets.
There was just going to be no way, no matter how hard I tried.
Yeah.
Like, bless my parents, they spent years paying for maths tutors and science tutors. I would just probably get a bit of a crush on the tutor and then just fuck around a bit and not be interested, and then just waste my parents' money. You know, I was really good at having a tutor and never doing any of the fucking work.
I do that thing where I would get so terrified because I didn't know the answer, and I'd be in my head so is this just a toss up between two numbers? I'd be like, and I just guess. And I just pray.
I know.
But my parents, they sent me to this woman called Miss Tillotson. I will never forget. I did my maths GCSE 5 times.
But I would have found it much more useful to learn about
a mortgage,
or
proper sex education.
Yeah, that would have been amazing. Yeah. We didn't have that in school, no. So there's how hormones affect a woman, you know.
My God, hello,
yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah,
you just start your period, whatever, and that's it, and you're a woman and you get on with it.
Yeah,
okay.
Pretty much, honestly.
I think the education system needs a huge amount of work.
Yeah, I think
it's a huge reason why I don't personally find an attraction to wanting children myself, because I don't think I'd have the patience for homeschooling, but in the same breath, I do think it needs updating. It's so archaic.
I 100% agree. And I randomly follow a bunch of homeschooling accounts. I don't have a child, by the way, but I just follow homeschool accounts because I find it fascinating learning about different ways to educate children, as opposed to the standard schooling system, which I think, you know, there's quite a few problems there.
Just think as well, it's a way to pigeonhole everyone into one thing, and that is just, it's the same with alcohol and drugs.
Yeah,
it's the same with recovery. It's the same thing. And we just everything. It's I talk about this a lot on the podcast. You could go on citralopam. I could go on ADHD medication. You could get a really good thing. I could not. It's you can't just slap a label on everyone and be like, oh, you've got ADHD, so you should go on that medication.
You know, the whole school system, I think, is just completely broken. So I didn't have the best time at school there, but I think I managed to convince my mum to send me to this hippie college, basically. I don't know how the fuck I managed to convince her, but so my dad worked away on oil rigs for most of my childhood.
Wow, okay.
So my dad would do a month on, month off, or he'd do, I think at the very beginning, there were some instances where he'd be gone for 3 months and then home for a month. So my mum was the main decision maker in the household. My dad was the breadwinner, my mum didn't have to work.
So it was quite those stoic roles.
100%. Yeah, I mean, my dad was literally just away working, and then when he would come home from being on the rigs, so on the rigs, obviously there's no booze allowed. Specifically, he would normally work off the coast of Cairo, so in any kind of Muslim-based countries as well. So no alcohol, obviously, is a given. So he would go away for the month, and then when he'd come home, he would be like, right, well, now's my fucking
party time,
you know. So he'd be playing golf during the day, then down the pub, drink as much as he physically could, then he would drive home. Both my parents used to smoke as well, so both of them would be smoking in the front of the car.
What makes me laugh is you used to have restaurants, right? And then you'd have the corridor like that.
Yeah.
And then you'd have smoking and non-smoking.
Oh yeah, girl, we'd always go smoking.
But there was no...
I know there's no separation. I know there's no wall.
The smoke is clearly going over there. It's just mental. It's mental.
I mean, I think, you know, smoking indoors in South Africa, I think it's still a thing. So, you know, obviously I know in the UK it got banned quite some time ago. I started smoking, I would say, from the age of 14.
Yeah, I was 13.
Yeah.
So would you say your dad had a problem with alcohol.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. He
quite hard for your mum though as well. Like thinking about that, he's away working, and yes, he's away working, but she's managing the kids. And but then when he comes home, it's like this is holiday time for him.
Yeah, 100%. And I know that my mum would have struggled somewhat because you know she was literally the matriarch of the family. She organized everything. You know, my dad would literally just give her the money, and then she would just sort everything out. And that's something I think that she's had to work really hard on in later life, giving him some of that responsibility, because I think there was definitely times of like almost like a little bit of resentment almost because
100%.
she was like, fuck, I don't want to do everything, like can't you do something, you know?
I think it's quite a common thing
Yeah.
because back then female and male roles just were female and male roles.
Yeah,
like
completely
we've only
separate.
recently really like women have recently, literally in the last 10 years I would say,
women have said absolutely fucking not.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can do this and you can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite
and
interesting.
like I think that it's quite I kind of feel sorry for our dads in a way because like it's what they were conditioned, that's what their role was.
Yeah, I don't blame my dad at all.
And neither do I. So my dad was off setting up a business, my mum looked after us. I mean, it's different now from my parents. Like my mum pretty much runs the business now. But it was just like it wasn't just looking after the kids. It was like running the house, cooking, cleaning, looking after your husband, looking after your children, like keeping everything going.
Everything, absolutely everything. And that's something that I definitely have noticed that I do as well in my relationship. So I very much took on the same role as to what my mum did with my dad, as to what I do with my husband. And it's only been, I would say, in the last like year or so where I've really started to say, like, actually know what the fuck is going on here. Like, we're an equal partnership. It's not I do everything and it's like I'm not your mum. Like that I don't want that. You know, I want to be partners, not I'm your mum and I sort everything out for you.
Yeah.
And I think it's because that's what I grew up with a lot. It's taken a lot of work for me to actually not transfer that so much into my own relationship. And since I got sober, both my parents have really reduced the amount of alcohol they drink.
It's very interesting, the trickle effect.
Yeah, my sister also doesn't drink anymore either. It's interesting because my sister was never really a drinker anyway. I think she could see the effects that I had on my dad and my mum, more so my dad, and she just wasn't interested. And my sister would literally have one drink and be fucked. Like, she's got such a low tolerance for alcohol.
It's a shame you didn't get that, Jean.
I know. I fucking missed that one. Yeah, it's so annoying. Like, she's never really been interested in drugs or smoking or alcohol. She's
hate her.
I know. Lauren. She's literally the complete opposite of me in that aspect. Like, whereas, I mean, I think I did enough for both of us.
Yeah.
I think I found alcohol obviously from quite a young age because my parents were always entertaining. I was hiding it from my parents at that stage, but obviously both my parents smoked like absolute fucking chimneys, and they'd smoke in the house as well. So there was never a separation between, oh, I'll just pop outside. Eventually, obviously, my parents found out that I smoked, and you know, no matter what they tried to do to stop me, I would just fucking do it anyway. And
also, it's so difficult. Like, I remember when my mum first caught me smoking, I was like, "Well, you smoke."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. My parents literally couldn't say anything. And specifically where my dad was working away all the time, he would come back and try and tell me what to do. And I'd literally say, fuck off. Like, you have no authority here, kind of thing. So I had like daddy issues from quite a young age. And being, you know...
I think as well, when your mum has essentially been the main...
Both parents.
Yes.
Yeah.
You are quite protective of the mum.
100%.
And so it's like, you dare try and tell... All of a sudden you want to tell me something... It was like, you haven't been here to experience everything that's been going on.
Yeah, and I would have such a wall up. Like, who do you think you are? Basically.
I'm your father. It's like, when you want to be.
Yeah, when you're fucking here, you know. But
Okay.
even when he was home, he was never present, you know. And I know that my dad has got like, and my dad and I are yet to have a conversation, like an actual emotional conversation. I don't think we've ever had.
Do you have a jokey relationship?
Yeah.
Same.
Very, you know, lighthearted. You know, we'll send each other memes. We've got the exact same sense of humor. You know, but it is. I love him and he loves me, but in terms of conversation, very surface level. Or or my dad will spend time with my husband because they get along like a house on fire and they can talk about a lot more. Like,
you get jealous of that?
I do, yeah, quite often. And like, I say, my parents are in Chichester. They moved back to the UK.
I've had that.
Yeah, it's really
I'm
frustrating.
like, why can't I sit there and talk to you like that?
I know, but something
because I don't want to talk about golf.
Yeah, and like I think something that my dad and I used to have in common was drinking.
Same.
So when I wasn't doing that, I feel awkward. Like there have been instances where I'm really trying to enforce that we do like activities, the four of us, as opposed to my dad and Jack fuck off for the day and then me and my mum, because otherwise I'm never working to try and bridge that gap almost. I would say when I was like in my early teenage years, we really struggled, and my mum would always say, well, when dad's home for this month, why don't you like suggest that you guys go and do something together?
I'd be like, no, because I'm not the adult.
Yeah, but like obviously I would have to, kind of thing. And there were, we had I remember we would try and do like a bit of a date night together, like daddy-daughter date night kind of thing. But then we would just end up drinking, and that was a lot of our relationship or our quality time was drinking, specifically in my teenagers. But my dad and anything that I would do would infuriate my dad and vice versa. So like if I knocked the salt over on the table, my dad would lose his shit, or if my dad is like he's a big man, he's a very loud man, and he speaks really slowly, and that fucking infuriates me when people speak slowly. I'm like, oh, just say the next word, please.
That's
you know what I
ADHD.
mean? Like I can't.
Yeah.
So our conversations can be quite like frustrating because I'm just always sat there on the edge of my seat, like, what's he gonna say next? Like, please get it out, But it's something that I'm, working on is trying to bridge that gap with him. But yeah, so where was I? So
drinking, first time drinking in South Africa.
Yeah, drinking in South Africa. So yeah, I started drinking from a young age, like always stealing things because my parents actually built a bar in their house.
Of course I did.
Yeah, so for entertaining purposes, obviously they would have like massive pool parties, like 50, 60 people around, like everyone's in the pool. Like my parents were like they fucking loved it. They loved entertaining. And obviously if parents are busy, you can
the
just
kids will play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I got introduced to alcohol from a young age, and I remember starting to drink a lot more when I got to maybe around 16, 17. That's when I moved to this like hippie college basically. And I did actually find a friend, and we became like absolutely like ride or die besties kind of thing. And then next thing you know, we'd be going out every Friday, every Saturday. Like we'd go to places where you wouldn't even need a fake ID kind of thing. And that's when the drinking really started to
ramp up.
Yeah, really ramp up. I'm really lucky that like I didn't find drugs at that age, because fuck knows what would have happened if I did. Like, don't get me wrong, I smoked a little bit of weed, tried shrooms a couple of times, but that was mainly because of like the hippie college that I was at. And then when I was 17, I remember my sister had a conversation with me, and she actually said, Lucy, I think you're drinking too much. Like things are getting out of control now. And she could tell that I was drinking, but her and I weren't really close when I was growing up. We're very close now, but not then. And I specifically remember she said to me, Lucy, you need to calm things down. Like, this is not going to end well for you. And I remember saying, okay, cool. Like, you know what? I'm going to listen to you. Like, I will actually just take it a bit easy. And then I remember it was that weekend. And was I 17? Yeah, I think I was 17. I went to like a local bar area because a couple of people that I knew at the time had a flat there. And it was basically like a promenade or like a strip, and they had like bars and stuff there. And these people that I was with stayed in a flat above. And I remember they invited me around, and then we went out to one of the bars for a couple of drinks. And I remember saying to myself, look, I'm only going to have one or two, and then that's going to be it. Like, it'll be fine. So we went to this bar, and then these people that I was with, they ended up having an argument. Like, they were actually a couple. They ended up having like a huge fucking row. It was really embarrassing. And then I said to them, like, look, do you guys want to go and like just sort that out, and I'll just wait here? So they went and like, I thought they were like sorting out this argument, but they weren't. They actually just went back to the flat and did God knows what. I don't know. And then these two guys ended up like approaching me, because obviously I was sat there on my own. Like, and I don't know why I just sat there. I think it was like,
Probably felt a bit awkward, like
awkward,
don't want to
not
go and
knowing where
interrupt.
to go.
Yeah.
Like also maybe like
Probably presuming they were going to come back as well.
Yeah, and probably a bit of like attention-seeking behavior as well.
And I don't want to go home yet.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Like I
Yeah.
wasn't ready, so I think I'd only had like 2 or 3 drinks by that stage. Probably like just a pint as well. So like I was completely fine by that point.
Yeah.
And then fast forward like literally 12, 14 hours later, I wake up. And then that's when I start getting all of these flashbacks. I can literally feel it in my chest now. Just this feeling of fight or flight, and waking up and thinking, "Fuck, where am I? What's happened?" And I remember waking up and feeling sick because I didn't recognize where I was, who was there, and then I like my body just felt like really, really sore, and I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" Like I literally wanted to be sick at this point, and then. So like my clothes were next to this bed, so I like got up, put my clothes on, and obviously they were the clothes from the night before. So I was like, "Why the fuck? Where am I? You know, I don't recognize the space." I put my clothes on, and then I go downstairs, and there's like a bunch of men asleep, and I was like, "What the fuck? Like this doesn't make any sense." Walk out the house, and I recognized like the area that I was in, and then I just started walking, and I literally fucking walked, and this must have been at like 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. I walked and I walked and I walked, and I eventually found the flats where my friends were, woke them up, because obviously they clearly hadn't given a fuck, you know, where
Yeah,
I
not
was.
great there.
No, literally. And I remember walking into the flat, and the first thing I just had this instinct of just shower, I need to shower. And that for me was like, something's amiss here. Got in the shower, cleaned off, and then I woke up these people, and I was like, "You need to take me home. I have to be home, like now." And they were like, "Well, what's happened?" And I was like, "I don't know, just get me home." So then they drove me home, and on the way home, I was fucking throwing up everywhere. It was like my body was actually rejecting itself at that stage.
And I suppose even at that point, you don't know if you've been given something.
Literally no idea.
Blacked out, right?
Literally completely blacked out. And then I got home, and my mum was like, "Oh, how are you?" Blah, 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 blah. And I was like, literally, "Don't fucking talk to me." Got into bed, closed the door, and I literally didn't resurface for 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, just
my mum kept on coming in, like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And she knew like what I was like when I was hungover, but normally I would bounce back the next day, or like the following afternoon I'd bounce back. And I stayed in bed for like 2 or 3 days, and I was just sweating and trying to piece together what had happened. And my mum eventually came in, and she was like, "I don't know what's gone on, but I'm booking you in to see a therapist, because if you won't talk to me about whatever the fuck's happened, you have to talk to someone else."
Bless her.
Yeah, I know. And like, she obviously then took me to therapy. And at this stage, like, I'd just been booked off of college. Like, there was no fucking way I could even leave my room. And I went and saw a therapist, and I think she was like a CBT, yeah, I think. 'Cause my mum was like, "I don't know what the fuck's going on here. I'll just like choose one."
Also, you're close with your mum, so it's probably quite hard for her to see you not talk to her and open up to her.
I'd shut off, like completely shut down. And then I saw the therapist, and then she started to like help me retrace what had happened. And unfortunately, the 2 men that had approached me, one of them had spiked my drink, and then next thing you know, they had taken me to like one of the bars that was on this strip. And then I think because one of them worked there or something, so they had the keys, because this place had like closed up. It was like God knows what time. And then they'd invited all of their friends. And then next thing you know, like so at this point I'd never done drugs. Like I'd smoked weed and shrooms, but like never coke or Mandy or anything. And I remember they were like pushing my head into a plate of coke, like constantly, and then making me like dance on tables and stuff. And I remember falling off and hitting my head multiple times, and they would just pick me back up and put me back on the table. And then, yeah, unfortunately, it did lead to quite a few of them sexually assaulting me, which is obviously like horrific. Yeah, it's hard because I don't remember everything, but I remember how I felt, and I remember I get flashbacks, obviously. And yeah, like it's shit. Like it is fucking shit, but and it's taken me a really long time to be okay with the fact that basically just not blame myself, because I constantly say to myself, well, if I just stopped drinking, then this wouldn't have happened. So it's my fault for drinking, because I should have known better. I shouldn't have put myself in that position to be vulnerable. But it's only recently clicked, and when I say recently, I mean like a fucking month ago, that actually if those people had just been genuine, like really good people and looked after me and actually just taken care of me, that wouldn't have happened either. So yeah, so that happened. And then
when you're having the therapy, did you at any one time question whether, did you struggle to believe that had actually happened to you?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. And I genuinely thought like, oh no, I must have wanted that. I thought like, oh no, like I wasn't assaulted. Like I just had a bit of a rowdy experience. That's not a fucking rowdy experience.
No. And
like,
also, that's not like your normal pattern of behaviour.
No, not at all. Like literally not at all. Like, don't get me wrong, I was like a very like sexual person. And, I didn't really respect myself. And I had, unfortunately, slept around a bit by that stage. But I was just exploring myself and, like, fucking living almost,
Completely different.
Yeah. And
did she make you, how did she probably knew.
Yeah.
I'm just interested in the therapy way of getting us to re-access parts of things that have happened, like this compartmentalizing thing that we do.
I think I was in such a state of shock. And I think, whatever drug it was leaving my body as well. So I was in such
a you're on a come down, but you don't even know that you've
taken... Well, that's the thing.
That's very confusing.
I had no idea what a come down was at that stage. So I had all of these different things going on in my body and, like, just feeling like my body wasn't my own, which was really, really tough. And just feeling like... I just felt, like, really dirty. Like, really, really dirty. And that feeling of dirt has taken years of work and suppression to move past. But in terms of the actual therapist itself, I don't really remember it being of any benefit apart from the fact that I just needed someone else to talk to that wasn't my mum.
Yeah,
so I think like a third party just to start to try and piece together and process. I don't think it was down to like the type of therapy. I think she just had a space that I could actually speak in.
Yeah, and I think when we grow up being really close to our parents, but then something traumatic happens, that naturally you kind of do want to talk to them about it, but at the same time, like, I know how much that's going to damage you knowing that. Like that's going to upset you that's happened to me.
Yeah, and you don't want to hurt the person who you love and who you're closest to. I knew that it was going to break my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
And then after, I think, the first session, the therapist said, like, do you want to bring your mum in? And I said, well, yeah, like, I think it's best because, like, I was 17. My mum would, like, still have to drive me home from therapy and she'd be like, how was it? Yeah, and, after therapy, you're like,
Oh, especially if you're especially going through something like that, and so young. But yeah, your mum was just... I know what that's like. Like, when I first started therapy, I was like, how's it all go? It's like, well, it's fucking exhausting and it's kind of terrifying and I don't want to talk about it because I've just spent an hour talking.
Yeah, I know. I get that.
It's funny because, like, I've had times... It's kind of the same when I first started doing AA and CA, like, as I was living at home and I would come home. Sometimes I'd come home and I'd be like, fucking great meeting, really good, like, so empowering.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for them to, like, keep on track of, like, the emotional roller coaster.
When to ask and when not to ask.
Because other times I come home after that would be one night, and then another night, and I wouldn't speak, and they'd be like, "How was the meeting?" And I'd be like, "No."
Not
like, okay.
Okay.
Then the next night, how was the meeting? Oh my god! Well, basically, what I've learned about myself.
Did you know?
Did you eventually tell them?
Yeah. So my mum got brought in, and obviously she was like crushed, and my dad was working away at the time. So my mum called my dad. He literally got on the next flight. He was home within 24 hours. I remember my dad coming home and, like, he had no idea what had happened. But my mum, this is the one and only time my mum got my dad to come home from a trip.
Yeah.
And she literally said, like, you need to fucking be here now. And my sister, I believe, was in Mallorca at the time. So she didn't know. And I don't think we told her for a good few months. But yeah, I remember my dad coming home and then my mum said, right, Lucy, your dad's about to come home. Can you go and take the dog out?
Yeah.
Can you just leave us? Like, I need to speak to him. And yeah, like, my dad, literally, I don't remember him saying anything for at least 24 hours. I think he was also shocked. And we never spoke about it. Me and my mum and my dad never really spoke about it. But then it started to get to the stage where my mum said, right, well, you're not just going to be okay on your own. Like, we need to do something. Like, because I was still like, obviously, like, I had massive PTSD, huge PTSD, and like I would just start twitching randomly. Like, I never fucking twitched in my life. Like, and I just became a complete recluse. Like, I didn't want to socialize. I didn't want to see anyone. I didn't want to do anything. And the worst part about all of that was when I did go back to college after like 2 or 3 weeks, I got fucking bullied, like properly bullied. There was one girl that like took a disliking to me for whatever reason. And I would walk into a class and she would literally, this is 3 weeks after being sexually assaulted, she would literally cough and say slut, like under her breath.
Did they know?
No, they literally had no idea.
But mad that that's the word that she chose.
Yeah, literally. And I was getting all of like the whore and you're a slut. I got massively slut shamed for the rest of that year. And I just took it. Like, I literally just took it.
Where did that come from then? Because you were friends with the boys and quite flirty with the boys.
Yeah. Because I was friends with boys and like I mostly had, I had obviously one really good girlfriend. Yeah, and like I stopped socializing and I just stopped speaking.
What about the friends who you were at the bar with?
She was actually at the same college that I went to, and she had noticed that I completely stopped speaking to her. And then I did end up telling her actually on the last day of college, and she just broke down in tears, and then I just walked away. And I've never seen or spoken to her since. So yeah, that was fucking wild. But I remember like my parents were like, you're not just going to be okay on your own. Like, so I went and saw a psychiatrist. I was with a psychiatrist for maybe 3 or 4 months. It was a bit of a weird dynamic though, because it was a man.
Yeah, quite hard that.
Yeah, so that I don't think
was the best move.
Was the best, but there was a couple of other things that were really fucking triggering at that time, because my mum said, right, well, we need to, my mum had done all of this research. She said, right, well, this was a week after the assault. She said, right, we need to take you to a government hospital to get like swabbed and stuff, because in case you ever want to try and find these people, you need to have evidence. And obviously we're talking about a fucking week later, you know what I mean?
I know. It's.
And I remember like the doctor who came in and did the swab was this like a man being like in my space a week after. And straight after the swab, the nurse said to me, she said, okay, well, you know, we can't see anything there, but you do understand you're still going to have to like open an investigation and prosecute. And I actually turned around and said, I don't think I can do that.
And in what fucking world am I going to win that?
But she literally said, and then she turned around and said to me, literally, I will never forget this. She turned around and said to me, if you don't do this, you will be responsible for if they do it to other women. She literally fucking said that to me. Those feelings of like guilt and shame just made me become even more of a recluse, because I had 2 options. Either I could try and start a court case against how many men, who knows, with no evidence and no proof, or
a week later.
Yeah, a week later, or I could try and finish my final year of school.
But now you've just been inadvertently told by a nurse that that second option is really selfish of you.
Yeah, so selfish.
A week after being sexually assaulted by multiple men.
Yeah, literally that was the situation I was in. Yeah, and do you know what the interesting thing is, that the subject that I did the best in was history, because I actually ended up opening up to my history teacher, because he saw some of the, it's going to make me emotional. He saw some of the bullying that was happening, and he would like stand up for me sometimes. And that ended up with, you know, he would say to me, like, he would keep me back after class and be like, Lucy, you used to be so interested. Like, what's happened? And then I opened up to him and he just started crying. Like, and he really took care of me for that final year of school. Like, he would regularly, like, check in with me and make sure I was okay. And, you know, always offering to help. And, like, he actually gave me like a historical artifact, like a really old Roman coin, like just little things like that. And I'll never forget that. Like,
so interesting that like your male like perception then ever since that's happened, right? And then naturally being scared of like the doctor, the psychiatrist, but then you've got a male history teacher who has like restored in a way, not the sexual side of things, but just the caring, love and support.
I think it was different because he was actually gay, so
right. Well, that makes more sense.
So he was quite feminine in a lot of aspects, but he was very, you know, he wasn't openly gay at the college,
Yeah.
so like he still kind of kept that bit to himself a little bit, but I definitely felt really comfortable around him. That made a big difference, yeah. So yeah.
That with your dad coming home and then never speaking about that, I feel like that adds to the shame of it.
Yeah.
But they just do not know how.
No idea. And I didn't know how either.
No.
Like, I literally, like, we were both just pretty much like fucking empty vessels at that point. Like, literally didn't even know what to say or how to say it or...
Did that make you feel like he wasn't protective of you? Like, in terms of, for me, being cheated on, for example, like, I got cheated on after 5.5 years. I'm not associating this to
I
that.
understand.
Talking about the dad thing. I've been cheated on every relationship I've ever had, basically. And for me, not to have that, growing up as a young girl, you get brought up to believe that you have... Well, I always thought dads were this, like, protective, match, you know, like...
Macho,
vet the boyfriend.
All-encompassing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I never had it. Never. It's just... I crave that, and what I've learned in therapy is that that's why I've gone for what I think is a protective man. Turns out I've gone for very controlling men. When I learned,
Preach it, girl.
When I learned that in therapy this year, wow.
Yeah. Woo!
You know,
Yeah.
and I don't resent my dad. It's just interesting. It's my theory of what I thought a dad should be. Then not having it, then seeking it elsewhere. It's just...
Oh, yeah, girl. Yeah, I mean, I have very similar issues when it comes to men as well. And I think that really... I think for me, it wasn't just about having, like, the macho man presence and someone to, like, just pick you up and look after you kind of thing. For me, it was more about being able to be emotionally vulnerable with a man.
Yeah.
That is something that I really wanted and craved. And
I've never done that.
I wanted someone to look after me, and I wanted someone to just hold me and just basically just like a big bear almost. And I always looked for that in all of my relationships, but it was very different when I met my now husband.
Yeah. Mine manifests differently in the sense that every relationship I've been in, I have been the emotional support because I completely abandon myself and I'm there for that person in an emotional capacity because I feel like it's all I have to give. But it's the reason why I have that to give is because I go for men who are broken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love a broken man.
They need me in that capacity and I love to give it because I don't feel like I have anything else to give.
Yeah.
So it's like, let me just brush all that under the carpet with
Yeah.
me. Let's fix you. Even though that's an impossible task because you don't want to fix yourself.
Yeah, you don't want to change.
So you're just going to use my emotional stability and just throw it against me.
Oh, yeah, girl.
Oh, my God. And I got to this point in therapy recently where I was like, I've never been in love. I have never been in love. And I don't know if anyone's been in love with me. But, like, I look at these relationships that I've had and I'm just mind blown when I now have this sober brain to look back on them. And it's like I can bird's eye view them. Your memory comes back when you get sober.
Yeah.
Holy fucking Christ.
Yeah.
Like, the stuff that I've allowed.
It's insane.
If any of my friends or anyone came to me with some of the shit,
a motherfucker. Like, honestly.
I'd be in prison.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, it's wild to me. And I would never open up and tell people about some of that stuff.
No, neither would I.
Because I've got the perfect relationship. When we're around everybody else, that's the man that I think I'm with. When we're behind closed doors, very different story. And that's terrifying.
It's really terrifying.
That I can get into that role in front of family and friends of like, this is great.
Yeah.
It really freaks me out still to this day that I was so able to do that, to step into that role, but then be shouted and screamed at home and told that I'm this, that and the other and why can't I look like this how I used to, showing me pictures of myself and saying why can't you look like that for me.
What a pig.
Do you know what I mean? And I think if any woman came and told me that story, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? But I couldn't say that to myself because everything that guy is saying to me in that moment, it's like I thrive off of it because you're telling me everything I think about myself.
Yeah.
And I've
That's
learned
quite interesting.
Learning that like literally 2 weeks ago, sitting with that, like you liked that because it fed the negative thoughts you had about yourself. Wow.
And I think what's also interesting is the relationship between addiction and keeping things like that a secret because I experienced very similar things with my ex, but on a surface level and in public, everything was fine. But, behind closed doors, it was a very different story. But I never spoke about it with anyone else because I was so afraid and I never wanted to share or be vulnerable with other people around what was actually going on at home. But that really didn't help, obviously, all of my, when I was really in my stages of active addiction with alcohol, because once again I was so good at keeping secrets from people that I loved because I was
What's
ashamed.
very difficult about that is then when it does all come out, the people who you've been pretending in front of find it very difficult to believe
100%.
that person who you were with could have treated you in that way. And that becomes very, very. I've really struggled with that
because then you're having to justify.
But I'm like, I'm. You know me.
Yeah.
I'm telling you this is what happened. We just didn't see that side to them. It's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, because you hid it. Like, there's a reason.
Mm.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
So I just want to say that I'm really sorry you went through that, and I know
Thank
that's
you.
never going to take away from the pain of that. But I think it's incredible that you've spoken about it. Did you go through phases with that of like the kind of the dealing with that process? I'm sure of like being angry at them, being like, what did you ever want to find
really
them?
Really fucking angry. I didn't stop drinking after the assault. I really lashed out, and then after that is when I became a real recluse. And in that period where I was lashing out, I was drinking a lot, and I'd made friends with like a bouncer at like a bar that I used to go, like a biker bar. I thought it was so cool being a biker girl.
All the phases.
Oh god, all of the phases. Yeah, biker girl. I was a biker girl for a while. And I got quite close with a bouncer, and I ended up telling him what happened. And I believe, from what I've heard from him and from other people, is that he did track down some of them and teach them a lesson. But who actually knows? Who actually knows? But that's what I heard anyway. So I remember specifically when I was leaving the house and I walked down the stairs, I turned around and I saw a child's bedroom. And there was, how like on kids' bedroom doors, they'll have their name in like blocks almost.
Yeah, like the block letters.
Yeah, and I remember I saw the name Sienna and I thought, what the fuck? This man's got a daughter. One of them has got a daughter who's obviously not in the house at the moment. And that is something that has really fucked with my head, especially whenever I see, and I forgot that name for a really long time, but then someone I loosely know, recently had a baby and called them Sienna, and when I saw that, my heart just stopped, and it just took me straight back to that feeling of walking out the house and seeing that. So there's instances that obviously I'm still trying to like,
and you probably never will get,
no.
Like they say in recovery, like people, places and things. And that's fucking true.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Not recovery, but traumatic.
I haven't been back to South Africa in 11 years. But, I really struggle to say the R word for sexual assault.
Me too.
Really struggle to say that. When someone else says it, I really struggle with that.
Me too.
Especially when...
Why is that, you think?
I don't know.
My ex-partner used to get very, very annoyed that I wouldn't use that word. I
can't. I think I've said the word myself once or twice in the last 11 years.
I think it's yours to decide, actually. And
yeah.
No one else's.
I don't know. I just can't. And like, specifically, I get really upset when, like, watching, like Live at the Apollo, like, the comedian show, whatever. Yeah. When sometimes in the past I've seen like comedians making jokes about it, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how uneducated can you be? And I'll just, boom, change it over. Like, come on. Like, things like that I can find quite triggering.
I think for me, I really struggle. It again comes back to all of the stuff that just has been my issue my whole life. Is like, I've listened to quite a few essay stories now, and I'll just go, oh, well, that wasn't really, that's way worse than mine, so mine's not valid. That's like classic.
You can't do that.
I know.
Yeah. Not one person's experience.
But I had to, it was my brother. My brother was the first person I told. It was him who told me that it was wrong. He's 2 years younger than me. That walk back, like that dirty feeling, that's hideous.
It's disgusting, yeah.
But then this constant, this is different for you because obviously that is exactly what happened. Whereas for me, it was I did let it happen. That's the thing I struggled with. I was like, I did let it happen. So like that's why I struggled to ever call it the R word. I just was like, I kind of still don't know if it was, but what I do know is that it was not consensual.
But that's the thing, and I think you've used like a really powerful word there, which I think is something for you to maybe think about. Is the language that you're using around is you let it happen, and that's really that's hardcore, man. I don't think that you did. Like I think there's a difference between actively enjoying something and obviously of course giving consent. And my understanding of consent is very different now to what it was 11 years ago. And I just. I want you to just bear in mind, like, if you're using the words like "I let that happen," fuck, man, give yourself a break, because you're kind of beating yourself up in that moment. You're putting the blame on yourself. You're taking on that responsibility. That was one of the reasons why I didn't continue with therapy, was because I just wanted to move on and I wanted to forget. But all of that suppression doesn't actually fucking deal with the issues that it left me with, which is like fucking like really bad PTSD, feelings of just always being in fight or flight mode all the time. Like my cortisol levels are like fucking up here. And and obviously, then that leading more into addiction and trying to find coping mechanisms just to turn my fucking brain off all the time, just always looking for dopamine, or I would say mainly always looking for dopamine, but just to shut this off is what will always attract me.
Yeah.
Will always attract me. Anything that can turn my brain off.
Same.
To stop myself from...
And get out of yourself.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, you know. I just want to... It's escape. Like, I don't want to be in here. I want to be somewhere else.
I literally had this thing that I would obsess over, which just sounds really quite sadistic, but it was, to me, this idea that at the end of the day, I could slice my skull and just take my brain out, pop it on the bedside table, and just relax. Like, it was a weird thing. It was a very weird depiction of, like, it sounds bad because you're taking your brain out of your skull, but like, I genuinely would fantasize about being able to just pop it out and just take a break and then pop it back in.
Yeah.
And just think, imagine that, like, relief.
Yeah.
And that's what I got from
drugs. Well, yeah, I mean, fuck, that's what I got from drinking, you know. With alcohol, it was a way that, alcohol was socially acceptable.
Yeah.
So I could get away with it.
Yeah.
And it would just turn my brain off, if I drank enough. It would just take the edge off, and then eventually, like, my brain would go quiet, but, obviously then I just got stuck in the cycle of fucking every day, like,
So did you leave? That happened in Cape Town.
Yeah.
And then you left for the UK.
Yeah, so that's when I worked for a year just in some, like, bars and stuff, which is probably
really
not the
healthy
best environment. So I wasn't, like, going out or whatnot. And so I don't really remember dating that much during that year that I was working. But then when I moved to the UK, that massively changed. But then that really changed when I moved to the UK. So
Mama came to town.
Oh, girl. I had fun. So I moved in December 2014. And when I first moved over, I lived with, like, an auntie and uncle. But that was really boring.
Obviously.
Yeah. And then I moved to my nan's house. And my
Nan likes to hit it up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Nan was in bed early. And, she wouldn't give a fuck if I was out late or whatnot.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that I moved to a new country. I didn't know anyone my age. How was I going to meet people? Everyone my age was, like, in uni, or, like, they already had all of their friendship groups from childhood and whatnot.
Yeah.
So dating, like, that's when Tinder, like, came out. I was a serial dater. I would go on, like, 2 or 3 different dates a week because it was exciting. In the first 2 years of being in the UK, I think I moved house like 10 times. Obviously, patterns of escapism are starting to creep in here.
Yeah.
And I ended up living in Gomshall, so a little village called Sheer in Surrey.
Okay.
And then that's when I discovered drugs, really.
Those little fuckers.
Yeah, MCAT, that's when that...
The cat piss,
Yeah, so a bit of that. Mainly Mandy, that became a thing. But I was never...
How did you discover... How does that come about? Did you meet somebody?
Because of working in pubs.
Yeah.
Working in pubs, you're there till the end of the night kind of thing, and especially, like...
And you have the lock-in.
The lock-ins, you've got all of the local alcoholics that, turn up.
And then you finish your shift, and then they want to buy you a drink, and then,
Yeah, and then one thing leads to another, and then, we had a little bit of a crew of the young people that lived in this village all working at the bars and
Mhm.
stuff, the local bars. So I formed a couple of friendships with some of those people, but that was because of
Drugs.
having drugs and
Yeah.
alcohol in common. And a couple of these people had a caravan. And so we would do Mandy nights on a Friday, like in this fucking caravan. Like, it's really sad, but it would be a thing. It would be exciting,
Oh, dear.
Do you know what? We had a fucking good time.
I always say this, like, with people who come out, like, there's so many fun stories.
Honestly, we had the best time.
Exactly. Before it becomes horrible and dark, like, drugs were great.
Yeah, like, honestly, drugs are fucking insane.
And that first time you try MDMA, fuck me.
Woo! Like, honestly.
You never get you never get it back. It's like, say the first thing of every drug.
Yeah.
But then you're constantly chasing it.
But
MDMA can seriously provide quite a few times. It is great.
The gift that keeps on giving.
It's just fantastic.
Oh, honestly, yeah, it was really good. And we would then meet up and go to
the caravan.
Make sure we've got our little Mandy bombs, and we'd have the same routines as make sure you close the blinds, and everyone dropping at the same time.
Wait, because what if we don't come up together?
Oh, and that was fun.
Yeah.
Until it wasn't, and then I started to realize, like, fuck, I want to get a different job, like. And then I got a job working in retail, and I ended up moving into Guildford, like town centre, basically. And because I was then far away from those people, I was then obviously just going back on Tinder because there was nothing else for me to do. And then I came across this guy who said, he was like, okay. Now that I can see all of these things, I see all of the red flags.
Oh,
but
looking
at that
back,
stage,
I know.
Like, literally, at the time, I was
Hopefully
so
this
young.
will help someone if they're listening, right? And if you recognise these points, run a mile.
Run. So like,
I have a very good talent of turning red flags to green in my head.
Oh yeah, so do I.
I'm A star. Yeah.
So bad. But yeah, so I came across this profile for this guy who he looked like quite, okay looking, muscles and some tattoos. And on his profile, he said he was a property developer. So I was like, wow, fancy.
Businessman.
Yeah. She could be a classy girl.
Okay, very demure.
Yeah. Fuck that trend. Honestly, I can't
honestly, when we got the clean girl aesthetic, I was like, we need to move on.
That's my favourite one so far. But
well,
now. Got there. Yeah. Fuck. I mean, I've only got it now, really.
Okay, so we're upping the game here. We're going for the classy, with the businessman.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, do you know what? Maybe a relationship would be a good thing, rather than all of this serial dating. I was definitely starting to feel a bit used. And I was starting to get tired of, like, the emotionless sex and the emotionless dating almost.
I find it fascinating. I've never done the whole sleeping around thing, but that was because of my level of my self-worth. I'm interested to ask, did you ever get anything in terms of pleasure out of those, or was it just like you like to be wanted, or you were back in control of a man and woman dynamic?
I think it was more thrill-seeking behaviour. I think I've begun to realise what I actually enjoyed was the emotional manipulation side of things and the flirting and how quick could I get this person, to really like me or to want to sleep with me.
The challenge, the chase. Yeah.
And I spent so many years not being myself. It's only something I'm learning about in sobriety, specifically I would say in the last 6 months. So I met this guy, and he at the time was like everything that I wanted. Like, he was very confident. He knew his own mind. He seemed very, like, emotionally mature. He just really came across as though he had his shit together, and he was like, he obviously looked like he had money. So I was like, well, that's an attraction for me because, like, fuck, I had none, and he just really looked like he could take care of me. And after moving house, like, I think it was 10 or 11 times in 2 years, I wanted stability. That's what I craved. And I knew that I was looking for that in a man as opposed to trying to do it myself, because I was quite clearly failing at doing that on my own. And yeah, we got along from the very beginning. And I would say after, like, in the first, like, 3 weeks, he would literally, like, shower me with gifts, take me shopping, take me to London, pay for everything. He had a very nice Rolex. He was wearing like brand new clothes all the time. He would buy me, like, he would literally just order like a load of brand new trainers and get them sent to my house. Like, just shower me in stuff. And I was like, I've never experienced this before in my life. Like, I honestly felt like a princess. And I was obviously lulled into this situation. And I mean, you know, looking back, I was so vulnerable, so vulnerable. I was like 20 years old, living in a different country, not really that much contact with my extended family, basically on my own, no real friends. And, you know, I was just available all the time. And he was very much in a position where he had lots of free time in his hands and lots of money, and obviously wanted to take care of someone.
And a little thing to play around with.
Absolutely, 100%. And after, like, I would say maybe 3 or 4 weeks of dating, he was like, do you want to move in with me? And obviously...
Just to say, that's one of the red flags right there.
There we go. Ding, ding.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, so he was like, oh, do you want to move in with me? And I was thinking, well...
Absolutely, I do.
Of course I want to live with you. Why not? And then he said, okay, well, just to let you know, I'm set up just at a room in my parents' house at the moment while I'm waiting for these properties to go through. So is that going to be okay? Like, my parents are totally fine if you want to live in our, like, they had like a bit of an annex. So I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Like, fuck. I mean, I would love to get to spend time with family as well. Like, all of these things that I've been looking for and whatnot. So I met his parents and they were lovely.
Let me just attach myself to this whole life.
Yeah. 100%. And I would say I was living there for maybe around 3 or 4 weeks. And he went out one day and his mum had been quite like standoffish with me, which I thought, oh, you know, she's a bit frosty. And then she pulled me to one side one day when he was out and she said, Lucy, I just want to make sure, has so-and-so made you aware of where he's been for the last few years? And I said, no. He said he's got a property development business. She said, and I literally just saw the colour in her face go. She said, right, I'm going to tell him he needs to obviously have a conversation with you. And I was like, well, what the fuck, this is weird. So then he came home and he sat me down and he said, he hasn't been doing a property development business for the last 3 or 4 years. He's actually been in prison. Yeah. And he was in prison for distributing Class A's, like having a massive, he was a part of a gang of like 20 men, I believe. And this was like all over Google and like the news and stuff. And they'd been importing Class A's to the UK and then distributing. So he thought he was like from an episode of fucking Power or something. Do you know what I mean? Like he thought he was a fucking
Gangs of London.
Yeah. Like,
living in your parents' annex.
I know. I know, but like he always just had all of this cash.
Yeah.
And obviously
mad for the mum.
I know. She was like, what the fuck? This girl doesn't know what's been going on.
Go mum.
I know. His parents like really tried their best, to be fair. They were lovely, like really nice people. And then he kept on saying like, you know, but that's in my past, like I'm not that person anymore. I'm going to be looking for a new job, but like I have actually done work in property development and stuff. But obviously what I didn't fucking realize was they'd just used cash to launder it through property development and stuff. Like I was so naive. I didn't.
Of course,
realize,
how
like,
would you know that?
Fuck yeah. And I would say like the first year that we were together.
And I'm guessing when he told you this, you were a bit shocked, but you were like, he's moved on from that now. Like
yeah,
glittery, sparkly,
yeah.
everything's
I was
fine.
like, oh no, it'll be fine. Like he says that he's a
And
different person.
And he's been honest with me now.
He was honest. He's done his time. Fucking hell. Honestly, it makes me sick just thinking about
How long was he there in prison for?
3.5, 4 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and obviously you only served like half of your sentence.
He's learned his lessons.
Yeah, well, that's what I thought. But, he kept on telling me about, how, dangerous prison can be and what prison was actually like. And I found it fascinating from a psychology perspective, learning about, how different men survive in prison and, different things they do to get mobile phones and drugs and, And the one thing I would say about my ex is that he never used drugs himself. And rarely drank.
Never get high on your own supply.
Yeah, 100%.
That's probably why he made so much fucking money.
Well, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then after the first year, there were straight away there were signs like he didn't like the fact that I smoked. And if he saw me even take a cigarette, he would start staring at me with like an evil, like his eyes would change color almost.
Intimidation.
Yeah, and he would just say like, "Why are you doing that? If you're doing that, you don't love me." And all of these little things really started to add up. And eventually, after working in retail, he turned around and said, "I don't think you should work. I don't think you should do that anymore. I think what you should do," because I was living in Hampshire and getting the train to Guildford every day. And he said, "I don't think that's right for you. I think what you should do is just find a nice little office job just around the corner, because then you're closer to home." Obviously, control typical narcissistic behavior. And obviously, I agreed to that.
But you were like, "Oh, he's looking out for me. This is so lovely."
Yeah, he really cares about my progression and my personal development. Like,
being there.
Yeah, and I ended up doing exactly that. I got a little office job around the corner from the house, and there was just lots and lots of little things that kept happening. I gradually noticed, instead of having one mobile phone, he then had two.
Okay, so we're burner phoning it out.
Yeah. And then he would have like special devices around the house that stop any kind of transmitting. So if anyone was like trying to mic up the house in some way, the sound wouldn't be able to escape. And then I started noticing like every evening he wouldn't sleep with his phones in the house. So he would take all of his phones and drop them off at his granddad's house in the evening, and then like literally come back. So that would give him like a couple of minutes warning. All of these little things started to add up, and I thought, fucking hell, this is not good. But I was trapped. I was literally trapped. I had nowhere to go. My parents were still in South Africa at this point, and I had no money because I was just blowing it each month, trying to keep up with his spending, obviously, and also trying to look a certain way. He very much wanted me to dress a certain way, to make sure I was getting my nails done, my hair done, buying nice makeup, all of these things. But obviously I couldn't really afford, but I was trying to like keep up with the spending side of things. Obviously we would go on like really fucking ridiculous holidays, like flying first class to Dubai, like we did all of that kind of stuff. But the controlling behavior just got so much worse.
What's your drinking like at this stage?
It was fucking bad. Like I was trying to hide it because
he didn't drink.
Yeah. And I would normally only drink when he was out the house. So because he couldn't handle his alcohol either, like on the odd occasions he would drink, he would turn into a monster, like a fucking monster that I would be terrified of. And so I would like I would drink in the evenings. Like I would obviously have probably I'd say a bottle of wine a night just to myself. But when you haven't eaten, that bottle of wine does hit you pretty hard.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. And I actually started going to the local gym, and I met a personal trainer, a female personal trainer, and her and I became quite close. And that started to give me a bit of an escape from being in that controlled environment, because I'll be up at 5 o'clock in the gym for, a good hour or two. And he didn't like that. He really didn't like me going to the gym and making friends. He didn't want me to have any friends. And eventually the controlling in the relationship got so bad that he had completely isolated me from my parents. And he knew that I knew what he was doing on the side. And he did say to me, "If you ever tell anyone about this, I will kill your parents." He would very openly said, very nonchalantly, and he would say things like, if you're not home by a certain time, I know where your grandparents live, I will go and kill them. I literally, I can just make a phone call like that. And living in that type of fear every day of knowing that if you step a foot out of line, he was going to go and kill my parents. Like, I don't fucking know whether he could actually do that or not.
You're not going to fucking risk it.
Well, that's the thing. I wasn't going to fucking take the chance based on all of the stories he had told me about prison.
Yeah, you've been in prison and you're back doing it again, and you're a scary man.
Well, that's the thing. He would disappear for 4 or 5 weeks on end. Doing whatever he was doing, normally in another country.
So this is a big time.
Yeah, like real big time. And eventually, I think it got to the stage where, for me, the turning point was one day I did actually see his phone, and I went onto his WhatsApp, which was really difficult for me to do because everything was so password protected. All of his phones had like blackout screens on them, so you couldn't really ever see anything. I remember we were on holiday once, and I did actually manage to get a second with his phone. And one of his best mates that he had said was his best friend wasn't actually his best friend, it was actually his ex, but he had changed their name on WhatsApp. And he'd actually
Classic.
he had actually been traveling back to see her for the previous 12 months. Every other weekend or so, he was, oh, there you go. Sorry. Yeah, every other weekend or so, he was traveling back to go and see her, whereas I thought he was working. He wasn't. He was literally just sleeping with his ex for at least 12 months. And when I found that out, I was like, no, I'm done. Like, I can't do that.
Were you scared though?
Yeah, I was really scared. I was stuck in another country, had no money, no other way of getting home. So I had to fake it. I literally had to pretend that everything was okay for like 24, 48 hours. And there were multiple instances of him getting wasted and like, really pushing me around and threatening me and saying that he was just gonna like, I remember I was like 15 minutes late coming home from work and he had taken all my shit and put it outside, like because I was late home from work. So he thought I was seeing someone else or doing something else. It was that level of insanity. And
I had that with with the first person that I was with. He basically got me into drugs. Like it was definitely a big factor. Like the first date, we'd gone to a Cotswold Wildlife Park, then we got into Oxford to go drinking, and then we got a cab, and the cab driver who he'd booked was also a cocaine dealer, and there was a Bible in the back of the passenger seat, and we got into the car, and the driver, who I thought was just a taxi driver, was like, "Do you want the usual?" And he went, "Yeah, mate." Next thing I know, we're being passed back 2 grams of coke, and he's getting a Bible out in the back of this cab, and we're doing lines of cocaine. And he just woke up one day and was like, "I don't want to do drugs anymore." I was with this person for 5.5 years, and I was like, "Well, tough cookie, huh?"
yeah, tough shit. Yeah.
I'm just getting started. Like, I was like 20, and I was like, "Well, that's not going to happen." But he would do then things like give me a green light. So like on my birthday, it was like, you've got another little treat tonight. You can get on it tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And then subsequently there was a time where we'd gone to London, and I'm at a stage already where like I'm drinking, I want cocaine, and I'd driven up in my car to London. He was already in London, and we was going out with some of my friends and staying at their house, and we'd had an argument because I wanted to get drugs and he was saying no. Anyway, we subsequently did it, and we went back to my friend's house, went to bed, and I woke up in the morning and he was nowhere to be seen. And my best friend was like, "I think you need to just come and sit down and I'll talk to you about what's happened." And she was like, "He's left in your car. He's driven back to where we live." And I'd been left in London, stranded, turned all of his phones off, blocked on everything. And I was like, So I then had to get my brother involved. I had to get myself back home. And by the time I got home, bearing in mind this is a Sunday now, and I've got my keys, obviously my car keys have my flat keys on them.
Everything.
So my mum has to call him. He's in a pub getting pissed, and all my stuff has been packed into bin liners and put into the car. Traumatic. Just this very controlling kind of.
But then you're on edge all the time because you're like, fuck, you never know what's going to happen.
Oh,
next.
I was so terrified of being alone that he blackmailed me into saying, like, if I don't tell my parents that I've got a problem with drugs, then he'll leave me. So, and then subsequently ended up, literally, we'd been together for 5.5 years, and we'd had another argument, and he said, "I suggest you don't come home." So I went back to my parents' house, and he'd left Instagram open on my phone, and I literally watched this situation play out where he'd put a picture up on Instagram of him drinking on his own, and this girl replied saying, "Drinking alone?" And he said, "Yeah, long story." And she'd basically just moved in somewhere, and he ended up turning his phone off, cheating on me after 5.5 years, just turning up to this girl's house and shagging her. And I'd watched the whole text messaging play out. And he then eventually called me and tried to lie about it. Said that,
it's the worst.
He was like, I've gone out for a curry by myself. I'm all sorted now. You can come home. And
I can smell the bullshit from here.
And I was like,
oh, God.
Honestly, and I just put the phone down. 10 minutes later, rang me back on FaceTime and flooded tears saying, "I did it." I was like, "You did what?" It's like, "I had sex with her." I was like, yeah, go figure. I know. That day, we were put into a month-long lockdown by Boris Johnson. So I had half a pair of knickers and I was at my parents' house. That had just happened. Obviously, I lived with this person, so I couldn't go back and get any of my belongings, nothing, and I had to go through that whilst at home. Like, usually I would be out with my friends or, escaping in some way.
Yeah.
Couldn't do any of that. And 5.5 year relationship, just, done.
That makes me feel sick.
But there were quite a few situations of that kind of controlling behaviour.
It's it's
and
so
I
bad.
never got an apology.
Oh no, absolutely not. No, fuck. No, that's the last thing I would expect.
Within 3 months, he was living with somebody else, and within a year, married and had a baby.
Wow, he's been busy.
Yeah. So that was great.
Amazing.
Yeah.
See,
You let. So did you confront him?
When we got back to the UK, I would say probably the worst kind of like situation or event, because I think he'd gone to London and his parents were away and I was at the house on my own, and then he came back and for some reason he was literally completely trashed, like completely wasted. I was thinking, fucking hell, what's happened here? And he came into the house and he was just on one. And I literally, as soon as he came to the house and I could see how fucked he was, I thought, fucking hell, this is not going to be good. Already I was starting to get really anxious. And then he just went off on one, I can't even remember about what. And that was by far the worst night. Like, he was really pushing me around quite a lot.
Physically?
Yeah, physically. And then threatening to kill me. And then he like died down for a little bit somehow. I can't remember how I managed to like pacify him almost. And I remember to this day, I was texting my mum and I said, Mum, this has happened. This is what's going on. Unfortunately, like, I really don't know what's about to happen next. I'm genuinely afraid for my life. These are all of my passwords for everything. This is what's been going on. Like, and I came clean to her over text, sent her all of the passwords to all of my shit because I genuinely believed that I was going to die. That's how serious it was. And then I tried to escape the house, but he ended up catching me, knocking me about. And then somehow, I think he ran out of steam. And then he kind of went to bed, I think, which is really odd behavior, I think, because he was so drunk. And I remember laying there on the floor in the bedroom, waiting for things to be silent enough so that I could tell that he, like, listening to his breathing to make sure he was properly asleep. And then eventually, when he was properly asleep, I had to plan my escape through the back door. And luckily at this time I was driving, so I had a car. So literally fucking ran, grabbed my car keys, and I fucking sprinted. And I got in my car, and I've never driven as quick as I could in my life. And luckily, his brother lived not too far away, and his brother's wife was quite nice. So I went round there, and they obviously knew that something really fucking bad had happened. And I said, I'm never setting foot in that house again. And that was the end of it. I did actually meet up with him in person like a week or so later. And he never apologized, but he said that he would buy me a house. He said that he would buy me a dog. And he said that he would buy me a new car.
Wow.
As a way to make reparations.
Like, I'm not going to admit that happened, but
there was no admission at all. And I just said no. And luckily at the time, the office job that I was working in, I actually met my best friend Kim, who I'm still friends with today. And Kim was living at her parents' house at the time, and she knew that I was basically living out of my car because I had nowhere else to go. I literally had like all of my shit in my car, and I was literally like, where do I go from here? My parents weren't in the UK, I don't think at that. No, they weren't, no. And luckily Kim took me in. Her parents took me in, and Kim and I shared a bed for a month or two. Then we ended up getting a flat together. And that was fucking wild, having a flat with your best friend.
Yeah. So you've not done cocaine yet at this point?
A couple of times, maybe.
Okay.
2 or 3 times.
But you're drinking?
Yeah.
Badly?
I would say at the weekends, yes.
Binge drinking.
Binging at the weekends, okay. Yeah. And then when Kim and I moved in together, that was wild. Because for the first time I was living with another girl, and obviously we really got along. We were very similar. We both loved to party. Like, she knew what I'd been through. Like, we really connected. You know, she's had a lot of problems herself. But obviously 2 girls living in a bit of a party flat was a bit of a problem. You know, we had a nice big glass table. And
Okay.
Yeah, you know where this is going.
Love the glass table.
Yeah. Always
Clean.
oh, girl. So Kim and I we had a lot of fun, like real good times. And then I'd also met my husband, Jack, through the same company.
Okay.
And we had a one-night stand, like a really drunk one-night stand. But there was something different about him. Like we had this like emotional, we just had a connection. Like, you know, when you fucking meet someone, you're just like, you're my type of person. Like, I get you. And he never left. And yeah, we're married and been together for 7 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, but it's been obviously quite a journey, because we basically, Jack and I have basically spent a lot of our 20s together. And a lot of what my 20s have been about has been trying to learn what a healthy relationship looks like, what boundaries are, and how to trust men.
A lot of growing together.
Yeah, and you know, the insane thing is that Jack has always been, you know, typical lad, meat and 2 veg, loves his rugby, his sports. You know, his parents raised him really, really well, and you know, very respectful of women, and you know, would never hurt anyone intentionally. But since I got sober 2 years ago, that was really difficult for Jack, because a lot of our relationship was, let's go to the pub, let's go and watch the rugby, let's go and do this, you know, very sociable people. And when I eventually hit rock bottom thinking, fuck, I just can't do this anymore, it was very, you know, the dynamics of our relationship changed, because
he's got to get to know
a whole new person, and I had to get to know a whole new person. And that's been a real challenge. And I would say I had concerns thinking, you know, well, I'm doing all of this growth and Jack's still drinking. You know, don't get me wrong, he was drinking a lot less. But when he would have a drink, he'd like to have a big fucking blowout, as we all would, you know. And, you know, drugs for me, you know, if it was there, I'd have it. But I'd never actively really, maybe a handful of times in my life have I ever actively sought it out myself. Apart from that, if it's there, I'll have it. I'll be the first fucking one involved, and I'll be the last one there.
But booze was your...
Yeah. Always the alcohol.
But everyone has a different... It's so interesting, like, what I'm learning through doing this is, like, it's the emotional connection you make to the drug. And let's be honest, alcohol's the biggest... There's a drug. And it's how it makes you feel or not feel.
Yeah.
That's the bit.
Yeah.
Like, I've had people on...
feel social.
Yeah, but I've had people on here who have done crack and heroin, but got addicted to ketamine. Crack and heroin are these big scary ones.
Yeah.
But they didn't connect with them emotionally. You know, they were like, oh, what's that about? Then they've done coke or cat, and they're like, whoa.
Yeah, hello.
Okay. Goodbye, insecurities. Hello, addiction.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And what was sort of what was the progression of, like, your drinking?
I would say my drinking got really bad after 2018. So by this point, I think Jack and I had been together for a year. We were living together from pretty much day one. And we'd both just fallen into this corporate job. You know, we'd never once stopped to ask ourselves, is this actually what we want to fucking do for the rest of our lives? You know, do we actually enjoy this? But we were just following the blueprint set by society as to what the expectations are. You know, you find a good job, you find a partner, you settle down, you move in, you know, you get a house, you have a dog, you have a kid, that's your life fucking done. And it's only in the last year that Jack and I really stopped and said, wait, what the fuck are we doing? You know, well, I started to ask myself that question a couple of years ago. But in 2018, I started to get a lot of pain in my left side and my left hip. And I was like, what the fuck is going on with this? And luckily I had private healthcare through the corporate job.
Yeah.
So I had months and months of tests and investigations to find out what this pain was on my side. And of course, the GPs, just trying to be helpful, just kept on prescribing me codeine.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So in comes codeine.
Yeah.
And fuck, I loved it.
For people who don't know, by the way, codeine is a prescribed painkiller, but it's quite a strong painkiller.
I loved it.
Yep, I've done it before. Not for pain.
Yeah. Pain of the mind.
Pain of the mind. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes. Very addictive.
super addictive. So, in walks codeine,
Mhm.
and
Let me take your pain away.
yeah, and I was chowing that shit, before work, during work, after work. I worked in sales, so having a bit of codeine, pumped me up for the day. I was fucking, I was making a lot of money, being very successful in my role, but the side effects of it were fucking rough, like the shakes and the you're twitching and you're always on edge because you're just always so like ready to fucking go.
When you were, I'm presuming, going over your prescribed amount.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. When you had to go and get more, how would you do that?
I would just explain to them that I'm in so much pain.
Yeah.
And I need to.
And they just kept giving it to you?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no idea at all. They just kept on signing off, giving it to me. And,
Had you worked out what it was?
Eventually, but it was a long fucking process. So I got diagnosed with endometriosis, and yeah, it was a fucking long process. Even going privately, I had to have steroid injections. I had to have an arthrogram. Never fucking get one. If someone says you need to have an arthrogram, just say no.
What is an arthrogram?
It's like you don't have any anesthetic, and they basically stick like 3 different lengths of needles into your hip bone. So you can feel the needle scratching against your hip bone while you are fully conscious and you can feel it. You are watching it happen. And then they inject dye in and then they pop you in an MRI machine to see whether there are any tears in different parts of your body. So if the dye isn't flowing properly. That was fucking horrible. And just spending so much time going from appointment to appointment, I was using the codeine as a way to help me cope. And then obviously mixing codeine with alcohol as well.
Yeah.
That was fun and started to black out a lot.
Did Jack notice that were you secretive?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not so much with the drinking, but with the pills, yeah.
When you did that first, like, outside of prescription dose, when you were like, maybe I would just take one.
From day one, I never followed the prescription.
Right.
I'd have 1 or 2, and then, like, after a few hours, I'd be like, ooh, I fancy another one of them, please.
Did your brain, because it was prescription based, kind of alleviate that? Like, this isn't bad.
I had no
I've been
idea.
prescribed it by a doctor.
Yeah, I had no idea how addictive it is, and when I eventually ran out, and like all of my sources of getting more were cut off, basically.
Panic.
Yeah, panic, and. It was a very dark time for me. I had, a good 4 or 5 months of, the world was a different color. The world was dark, really fucking dark. And it was hard. It was really hard.
How many were you taking a day?
10 to 12.
Wow, yeah, all right.
Yeah. Like I would literally just pop, 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 pop. Ooh, what is that time again? Kind of thing.
Feel it wearing off and then it's like, okay.
Yeah, I'll pop another one.
Yeah.
And that was my first like real time where I was like, ooh, maybe this is a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You start to get this.
It always starts off so fine.
I know.
And you're like, I've unlocked life. I can feel this great.
Yeah.
And like, it's fun. Like with benzos, for example, like I say a lot, but when I met diazepam, I was like, I can sleep and I can take loads of drugs. Yeah, I was like, I've unlocked life. I can set on coke, which is my favourite best friend in the world, and then I can go to sleep, which is the thing I always struggle with, and that's the only reason why I don't want to be doing coke.
Yeah.
Bam.
I know. Yeah, that's one of my favourites.
Nothing has longevity.
Yeah, so...
And the tolerance, because I was starting with half. Next thing I know, and by the end of my diazepam, I was doing 3 or 4.
Oh, yeah, girl. Yeah, I could smash through 4 diazepam easy.
Yeah, and then I'm forgetting.
But that's the thing, you forget, don't you? You really forget. You're like, have another one? Nah, I'll just take another one, just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah, just in case.
That's a classic.
Yeah.
So, even though really in the back of my mind, I know it.
Yeah. No, we all know deep down, don't we? You can only lie to yourself so much, can't you? Like, it's quite interesting, yeah.
So the codeine ran out.
Yeah.
When you say it ran out, what do you mean? Like, people...
It's just finished. Like, I think the GP surgery eventually kind of cottoned on to how much they prescribed and said, maybe we'll stop doing this. I think I'd also found a way to order them online without a prescription as well. I think if I remember correctly, I'd found an alternate route.
The online doctor.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
no.
AKA the black market.
Yeah.
AKA Telegram.
Oh yeah, fucking Telegram.
The menus on Telegram.
Don't even get me started. Telegram.
I was like, people are getting professional
I know. People, yeah, it is. So yeah, that ended. That was really rough. And like,
But when you say it ended, like,
I chose to end it. Like
Okay.
I knew that I couldn't continue any longer. It was fucking hard though. It was hard work, and like I couldn't tell anyone because no one knew
yeah,
that I'd been using it. So I felt isolated, alone, no one to talk to. You know, I didn't even tell Jack how many I was taking. And you know, and I would just play the pain card. Yes, I wasn't paid, but like fuck me, it wasn't that bad. So fucking 12 codeines. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was really rough.
Was diazepam included in that? Or
No.
this comes later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only briefly dabbled with diazepam because I know that I can't take it. So
Yeah.
but yeah, because I'd stopped the codeine, that's when my drinking started getting worse. And
Also, we did a nice replacement.
yeah,
Okay.
100%.
No cross addiction. Yeah.
And I was also self-medicating because as well as being told as I had endometriosis, the doctor also told me that I was infertile. So the doctor told me that throughout all of their investigations, they had found that both of my fallopian tubes were completely shut. And he then told me that I wouldn't be able to have children or get pregnant naturally. And that for me was a big fucking blow. You know, I was like 22, 23. I'd met this amazing man and we had all of these plans. And I wasn't really that clued up on IVF and how amazing it is and how many people have successful pregnancies and whatnot.
But also a perfect excuse to use.
Yeah, 100%. I think also one of the main things is when I was told I was unable to get pregnant naturally, the doctor said he believed that he said there was a couple of reasons why my tubes could be closed. One of them could be I was just born that way.
Are you going to say?
Another reason, he said, is due to an infection. So while my ex was sleeping with his partner, my ex had actually given me chlamydia, and I'd had that for a year, and that was completely untreated because I didn't know that he had been sleeping around, and I trusted him, and I had obviously not slept with anyone else. So I went a year of having chlamydia without being treated. So obviously an infection like that is pretty fucking aggressive, and that can wreak havoc in your fucking in your system.
Are there any symptoms for people to look out for that? Or is it quite secret? Is it quite a silent?
It really depends. It really depends on so many different things. I frequently had UTIs and stuff, so I just kept on putting it down to that. But yeah, do you know what? It was such a long time ago, I can't really remember, and I don't want to give the wrong advice.
Fair enough.
But yeah, it can lay dormant for quite some time, I believe, but then it can also flare up and whatnot. So eventually, when I did have a flare up, that's what prompted me to get tested. So you know that could be a reason why I'm infertile, and that for me was infuriating. Like I was over my ex, I was over the way he treated me. You know, I'd moved on, I'd processed all of that, but the fact that he could have potentially taken my future away from me and punished me, not only me but also my husband, that is something that I find very difficult to forgive or let go. And I'm still working on letting that go because that makes me fucking angry.
Yeah.
Really angry.
Yeah. It's through no fault of your own. And that's just like...
I trusted someone, I was vulnerable with someone, I was taken advantage of, and then I'm punished for it. And this is a pattern of behavior that I'm currently working on with my therapist, which is, you know, there's been so many instances in my life where I've tried to be vulnerable with men, but then they've completely taken advantage of that and really hurt me.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's something that Sarah and I are currently working on. So that's
good. Good baseline topics to cover.
Yeah.
And how did Jack deal with that?
I don't think very well. Jack was never emotionally vulnerable with me. But and our relationship, I would say we've normally had like quite a good relationship, you know. But unfortunately, in May of this year, Jack had a mental breakdown. It's the first time he's ever really experienced mental health in his life. You know, he'd been always conditioned because of this corporate environment. He'd always been conditioned to believe that mental health is an excuse not to work. that's how we were both conditioned, working and being brainwashed by this corporate environment, specifically one company. And I believe the company is trying to do more now to learn a little bit more about it. But
it's a shame that it has to get to someone having a mental breakdown before
absolutely
we look at that.
So yeah, Jack had a mental breakdown earlier this year, and it's been since then that he's gone through this whole spiritual awakening. Like before, obviously he was like meat and two veg kind of thing, and now he's like fucking doing breath work. He's going to Reiki.
Jack.
Honestly, he's going to therapy regularly. He's been sober for 4 months. Like, he has honestly done 15 years worth of growth in the last 5 months, and it is fucking insane, and I'm so proud of him.
Do you love to watch that? I
love it.
Life-changing.
So exciting. Honestly, it's like he's having a glow up as
well.
No, it's awesome. I'm so proud of him. And now, like, we've got so much more to connect on because he's having all of this therapy.
Let's go to a sound bath together.
Yeah, I know. And like, because it's the first time in his life where he's having therapy, and he's actually learning like how to communicate how he's feeling, as opposed to just always suppress, which is so typical for so many men, you know. But he's determined to break the cycle, and he's like, no, fuck, I'm going to talk about my feelings, and I'm going to challenge myself, and you know. It's amazing. It's the coolest thing ever, watching someone you love change their life.
Yeah.
Jack's job, the level of pressure and stress working in like high pressure sales environment is just insane. And in the lead up to his breakdown, you know, he'd worked with this company for, I believe, 7 years and always been addicted to work and only ever focused on work. It was always as though he was literally a fucking horse with blinders on. The only thing he could ever talk about or think about or focus on was work. And work, he was obsessed.
I think a lot of men measure their happiness and success on work. And then when something like a mental breakdown happens, all of a sudden it takes that to flip the switch and be like, what the fuck? We've got one life.
100%.
Like,
and
and also I'm working to make pay someone else's mortgage whilst I'm going to the depths of hell mentally.
Yeah.
You know, like realising that actually, God, these exterior things are not as important as what we get conditioned to believe, that they're nothing.
Nothing, literally.
The car, the house, the this, the that. How are you?
But he had never stopped once to ask himself that question. And he had his stag do in the April, and he just never quite recovered from that. When he came home, he literally just looked dead, almost. Like he was all swollen and puffy, and he just wanted to sleep for a week. It's really difficult to go from seeing, you know, Jack is the person who will make everyone laugh. You know, he's literally the funniest fucker I know. He makes me laugh every single day without fail, and that's why I love him. But to watch someone go from being, you know, a bit of a class clown,
life and soul
of the party, the entertainer, to watch someone go from that to then the next day there's nothing, really fucking scared me. And it was so scary to the point where, you know, we got his parents involved. Jack then spoke to the GP, and I'll take my hat off to him because he literally fucking did every single thing that myself and his parents suggested. Went straight to the GP, spoke to the GP about how much of a bad place he was in. And then he's actually also just been diagnosed with something called responsibility OCD, which is quite interesting. So it's a form of OCD that makes you feel as though you take everything on. And I think that can also be quite common in men. You know, you feel as though you're responsible for everything. So you never share, you never communicate. You just pile on. But then if you're never getting rid of that energy in a healthy way, that's going to start to manifest in other areas in your life, whether that's drugs or, you know, alcohol.
Or sometimes with men, what I sometimes see is like it doesn't even manifest anywhere else, but right up there in his own brain. Like, it doesn't need to manifest in an alcohol or a drug or this. It's just so internalized with men.
That's the thing, like
it's just sitting in there, molding away.
Yeah, and like it's really fucked up. Like, you know, specifically with OCD, you know, Jack would just spend 2 or 3 weeks just basically sat on the sofa ruminating and obsessing over, you know, things that happened 10 years ago, 15 years ago, things that he's never actually stopped to process.
Did he stop working
Yeah. Yeah, so he had 3 months off, which was challenging. It's been quite tricky for me because I'm used to him being like the rock in the situation, and then obviously the roles are massively reversed. You know, I would need to wake him up. I would need to get him out of bed. I would need to make sure he's eaten. Need to make sure he's had a shower. You know, I had to go into the parent role.
There's hierarchy. There's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Which is basically baseline is the things you just said there.
Yeah.
And like I got sent it by my therapist, and I was like, okay, of course I breathe, of course I drink water, and of course I eat. And then as I was thinking about it, I was like, let's just pull this back and think about it in depth. Like, am I eating well? Am I drinking enough water? Am I sleeping? And am I? I don't know what the fourth one is, but you can look it up. And
yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's like that is baseline human care for yourself. And if you can't give those things to yourself, you're in a bit of a pickle.
Yeah, we were. Yeah, it was really fucking scary. Like really, really scary. Like there were multiple occasions where, you know, I never left him alone. So I could never leave him alone in the house. So that obviously affected, you know, me trying to run a fucking business. And obviously plan weddings and, you know, it was a lot. And that's what actually prompted me to get back to actually having therapy to make sure that I'm taking care of myself, because if I'm not taking care of myself, I can't fucking look after him.
So true.
You know what I mean? So, but he's so much better.
But he's willing, you know, that's
so willing.
That's a big thing.
So willing. He will literally do anything. Yeah. You know, he's
open-minded.
So open-minded. Like, and I never thought we would get to this stage. I thought he was always going to be like the typical lad, but no, he's literally grown so much. But he was willing. He hit rock bottom and he needed help, and he
doesn't want to go back there.
He never wants to go back there ever again. And now, you know, he's reassessing. He now understands that working in that type of environment is no longer serving of him. He is using words like, it's no longer in alignment with me. And I'm thinking, fuck it. Yeah.
Come on.
I know. Yeah.
Get it.
Yeah. Like,
and you're just there like, damn.
Yeah. I'm like, hey.
Baby got back.
Yeah. Like, he's got all of these, like,
it's like when you got sober and you met the real you're like getting to experience that with him along the journey.
It's so cool. And I think
thank God you like him.
I know, fuck, can you imagine? Well, I mean, we've only been married a few months. So.
In terms of your, obviously you've drank from the age of 14 up until we've kind of got on this binge using.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I'm very passionate about people not thinking that that's not an addict
behaviour.
Yeah. You know,
some people say, well, I don't drink during the week, I only drink at the weekend, so I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
That's a typical
thing
that I've
drink to blackout.
Yeah. I would say my drinking, so I stopped drinking.
Did you have withdrawals from codeine?
Yeah.
What was that like?
Night sweats, tremors, paranoia. Yeah. All the fun stuff, the really, really fun stuff. The withdrawals from alcohol were the worst. The tremors that I experienced, I actually took videos of it because I was like, this is not okay. And my hands are literally like...
So before we get to withdrawals of alcohol, how do we get to... When does the drinking go from binge to...
There was a period of around 6 months, I would say, where...
Before you got sober?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which were the worst.
They tend to be.
Yes. Yeah, I think it was after Christmas, after a Christmas, we got engaged. That was really exciting, but I was still struggling to process the fact that, like, the infertility comments and whatnot, and I started to be really unhappy with the work that I was doing. I started to think, this doesn't make me happy anymore. I hated it. I literally woke up one day and you know, Jack was driving both of us to work, and he was like, what's wrong? And I just burst out crying. I said, I'm so unhappy. I am so unhappy doing this job. I don't want to do this job anymore. And I was trying to find ways out. I was trying to find ways of escape through drinking. So my drinking, although I'd never drink in the morning or during work, because normally I'd be at the office, as soon as I would get home, that would be the first thing that I would do, is crack open that bottle of wine. During the week, I would try to not drink too much. So Monday to Thursday. But as soon as Friday came around, fucking hell. Like, especially I would try and make sure that on Fridays I could work from home. So if I could work from home,
planning.
then I could start
On
earlier.
Thursday.
Yeah.
Thursday night.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
I would be able to have a drink on Thursday night. So then Friday I could get up later. And then maybe at lunchtime I could have a little cheeky gin and tonic, just a little one.
Because it's a Friday.
Because it's a Friday.
Yeah.
We're celebrating, or, I deserve it. And then as soon as work would be, starting to wrap up, I'd already be a couple of gin and tonics down. Normally I'd have to start with gin and tonics, because if I started with wine, then...
Too drunk.
Well, the wine was too difficult to hide, I found. So Jack would always be working in the office, so I'd be at home on my own, so no prying eyes, obviously. So normally I'd start with gin and tonic, and then I would be able to hide how much alcohol I'd had, because I would top up the gin, or... Like, Jack would never check the gin.
Yeah.
He would only be keeping an eye out for the wine.
Yeah.
And then things started to develop when I started to have to hide the bottles. So, every time I would only have wine in the house, for example, I'd then obviously finish the bottle. And then I'd have to hide it, normally in my wardrobe somewhere, because that would be the one fucking place I knew Jack wouldn't bother to look, in my wardrobe. But he would always have a bit of an inkling, because... I would always be the drunkest person, or the person to get the drunkest quickest, if that makes sense. And for me, as soon as I would get drunk, slurring words, and I have a lazy eye as well. So these are like very telltale signs that everyone would know, oh, Lucy's been on the piss again. And then I'd just black out and have no memory. And then the next day I'd wake up with extreme anxiety. I would have said things that I would regret. I would get a bit gobby, a bit loud, to the point where, like, it's embarrassing, like it is.
Yeah. Did you just have a flip switch moment? Was there a specific...
I went on a work trip to Paris with this corporate company, but the work trip itself wasn't actually work. It was more like a fun trip. And I spent 2.5 days completely drunk. Completely wasted. And so rock bottom for me was when I came home from this trip. I was broken. Like, I was so tired, so over it, and I was seriously questioning, what are my options?
Did you feel that you had ever dealt with what had happened when you were 16, what had happened with the domestic violence, and that, do you feel like you had ever, until you got sober, do you think you'd ever really dealt with it?
No.
Or just glazed through life?
No, yeah, I would always just suppress and compartmentalize, and that's one of the things that I've had to be really aware of. Is part of my problem is I'm always trying to turn my brain off, because I don't want to process those things, but maybe I wouldn't need to turn my brain off if I actually fucking process those things, which is obviously what I'm working to do now. But yeah, rock bottom for me was not pretty, and I remember when I did get home from Paris, I was still drinking for a couple of weeks, and Jack had said to me multiple times, don't you think you should, like, take a break or something, and I was like, yeah, but I can't just fucking take a break, like, I can't. He was like, why don't you just have one? Do you know what I mean? And I'm like, because I can't.
And I don't want to.
Yeah, one's not fun.
Yeah.
And then I remember waking up, I think it was on the Sunday, and I said to myself, right, tomorrow's the day. Always
Monday.
a Monday.
Yeah.
Got to be a Monday. Otherwise, if it was like a Wednesday, I would have to then carry on until the Monday. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's gotta be a Monday. So on the Monday, I woke up and I thought, right, I'm going to do 30 days. If I could do 30 days without alcohol, I'm actually giving myself a chance here. And I did the 30 days, and it was really fucking difficult because Jack would still have the odd drink in front of me and whatnot, and that was really tricky. And then after the 30 days, I thought, oh, maybe I can do another 30 days. And then I did 3 months. And then I thought, right, I fucking cracked this. I don't need anyone. With all of my problems, I'd always been keeping a secret. Like, I never told my parents how much I was struggling with alcohol. Obviously, I mean, they could fucking tell from, the amount that I was drinking whenever I was around them as well. Like, I wouldn't hide it from them.
No, but you don't have to with booze.
That's the
Well, I
thing.
never felt like I had to because it's legal and
Well, that's the
everyone
thing,
does
you know,
it.
everyone does it. You know,
Yeah.
it's normal.
Yeah.
You know. And after those 3 months, I started to lose weight. My face looked a lot less swollen and round. You know, my tremors stopped, and I started to have a bit more energy, and I started to be able to actually sleep all the way through the night. And I was starting to slowly see all of these little benefits, but my problem was still keeping everything a secret. And
this is when I think we realise, maybe it's not an alcohol and drug problem. Maybe it's a Lucy and Hannah problem.
yeah,
Like, that's the biggest. After 6 months, I got to that point because I was like, I'm a drug addict, I'm this, I'm that. And I am an addict, and I really do know that. But the getting sober is the first bit, but I don't think, for me, that's not the hardest part.
It's not. 100%.
The hardest part is when you think you've cracked the code of sobriety, and then ding, ding, ding. Ooh, I feel lonely. I feel angry. Feelings of things that I would always use on. Oh, but I can't do that now. So now I've got to sit and process this feeling.
That's the hard part.
That is where we tend to relapse because, and I've worked that out now as well, such a serial relapser of promising myself, okay, this weekend, one last bender, one last this, one last
There's always one last. Yeah.
it's the surrendering. That's the bit. Like, give up the fight of negotiating with it.
And it's interesting you say that, because one of the words you've used there was surrender. And that was one of the reasons why I was too afraid to go to AA or to actually reach out for further support, because I knew that if I surrendered, that would be me admitting that I had a problem. And I did not want to tell anyone that I had a problem, because the worst of my drinking was always in secret. No one knew. And people still don't know to this day how fucking bad it actually was, to the point where, I'd never attempted suicide, but I definitely thought about it multiple times.
Something I've learned in therapy, which is actually a real relief to me, is that it's very normal to have suicidal thoughts.
Yeah.
And actually, it's very, very common. Planning and consider that's a very different place to be.
Yeah.
But the reason why, I don't know about you, but I would think like that way, is because I presumed that I was depressed and I had anxiety and all these other things. Actually, no, I was behaving in a way with substances that, of course, was going to make me feel depressed and anxious and suicidal. Because that's what those things do. They provide something for a short period of time or long, but until they don't anymore. And then you're like, well, what the fuck do I do now? Because now I'm an addict and they're not working how they used to. So, hello, what do we do now? Oh, right. Yeah, because that's not a long-term happiness gain.
No.
And you got nothing. It just doesn't last.
It doesn't last.
Or provide. Then you're like, shit, I'm either going to move on to some fucking hardcore shit.
Yeah, or, what's next year? Where do we go from here?
Or I'm going to have to fucking take a long, hard look at the mirror and ask for some help.
Yeah. It's fucking rough, man. Like, sobriety, it's not for the faint-hearted. Like,
everyone would do it, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and I think society is really starting to change. Specifically, like, the younger generation that's coming through, like, they're so much better at, like, setting boundaries and, actually noticing when something is actually like a fucking poison and it's really bad for you. You should probably not touch it, kind of thing. And I see, so sobriety is basically becoming really popular now, isn't it? I know obviously in the States it is quite a big thing already, but in the UK it's really starting to catch on, specifically in the last, I would say, 2 years. It's really started to grow, which is so nice to see, to be a part of that community.
I feel like with technology and us being really quite out of control of how quickly that's growing, we've lost connection in the way that all of us crave it, which is like this. But we've got it through alcohol and coke or whatever drug it is, because we don't know how to have it naturally. And I think I hope that we're coming to this realization that as the human beings on this earth, we're the only ones who are going to be able to turn around and stop that, take back control of this AI, all of this stuff that I feel very uncomfortable with how the world is heading in that way. And we've kind of gone through this phase of like, oh, that was fun, but actually now I just want to strip it all back, be in nature, get grounded, have some tea and have a conversation.
I just want slow living in a cottage.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And chuck some animals in for good measure.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Like the social media comparison life of emulating everything that's great about your life when you're sitting in a corner crying, but actually you're just going to put that photo up of that restaurant you're at because people will think it's cool that you're at that restaurant. I just feel like we're going to shift. Like,
who gives a fuck?
Really, really hope that we're on the way to that now. Let's get fucking back to basics.
Sense of community and a sense of like connection with another human being.
Like, let's say hello to each other and have a smile.
Yeah, I know, but that's like such a foreign thing in the UK.
Especially in cities like London. That's our biggest listening group. And I think I lived in London for 5 years and fuck me, it's just hideous.
I can't do it,
I hate going back there.
I can't. Like, I can maybe do, I mean, I have been to London quite a few times, but I can maybe do half a day max. So I get really overwhelmed by sound.
Same. It's an ADHD thing. Right?
Yeah, I can't. Like, I've even bought those like loop earplugs.
Someone told me to get some of these.
Yeah, I bought some of those. Those are good. I never noticed it until I got sober.
Same.
I before I got sober, I'd only have a problem with people eating really loudly, or like being in a cinema and then someone opens like individual suites. That would drive me fucking insane.
Slow walkers.
Can't deal with it.
Traffic.
Can't deal with that. Slow walkers for me. Honestly, I want to fucking cut their ankles off. So, like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
You're not fucking using it. Do you know, like, move, bitch.
But it's like, maybe it's a me problem, by the way, because maybe that person isn't in a rush because they're not late for everything.
I know.
And they're just meandering through life.
Girl, I rush everywhere.
Because I'm late to everything all the time.
It's so hard.
And like, I've had all the time in the world to get ready, but it's like I need that extra pressure.
Oh yeah, no,
yes.
But I'll only leave just enough time to get there. So if anything goes wrong,
I do consider traffic.
Oh yeah, no, I don't.
Or the fact that my tire might pop. Or I've said to myself, I must get fuel the night before. I've completely forgotten. Get in the car. Why is it on red? Why is my car?
Yeah.
Well, Hannah, because you didn't fill it up. No, that's the car's fault.
I know.
It's just,
girl, I get it. It's like, so with London, like I enjoy it from a distance, but I don't like being pushed. I don't like feeling too hot. So like the underground for me is an absolute fucking no-go. It's just the concrete jungle. And like, going from working in such a high-paced corporate environment to then doing what I do now, I'm just outside all day on my own. It's fucking great. Or I'm with a dog, or maybe I'm just with one or two other people. But I'm having a shared experience. I'm connecting with those people and I'm teaching them and I'm being of service to others. And that is something that's really important to me. Not only being of service to others, but also helping dogs or animals in general. That's what I'm really passionate about. So I really struggled to go from how my life looks now to then being thrust into like a really busy city. Yeah. The two just like don't align.
No, I feel the same way. I think it's about just like not forcing things that you used to enjoy and thinking I've got to enjoy those again while sober. No, you don't.
So different.
You don't, because you're not. You like that because you were an extended version of yourself with a substance. You're now the most natural form of yourself, and that's going to be very normal that you don't want to go to the hustle and bustle of London and get in a fucking.
I know. Yeah, and I've been sober for almost 2 years. You know what I mean?
So you did the 30 days and did it just trickle effect? Did you get any support with?
So after 3 months, I actually had a relapse.
Okay.
Went to Dublin for the weekend.
Thought I can drink again. I can have one or two.
As soon as we got to the airport, 5 o'clock in the morning, glass of Prosecco.
What is it about an airport?
And do you know what? As soon as I had that first sip of Prosecco, there was a voice in my head, and I fucking never forget this. The voice in my head said to me, where are you going to get your next drink from?
Yeah.
As soon as I had the first sip. And that, for me, so scary. I spent the rest of the weekend completely fucked. Don't really remember much. Obviously, I drank a load of Guinness, red wine, and all the rest of it. Made a complete tit of myself. Fell over multiple times. Bashed up my legs.
Straight back to square one.
Yeah, I just made an ass of myself. And those feelings of guilt and shame. And, I got a sober coach.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was really cool. So her name's Annika Rees. She's amazing. And she was the first person to start really teaching me about sobriety and how alcohol affects your spirituality. And I'm very interested in that. Yeah. And honestly, since starting I mean, I think I was with Annika for maybe like 8 months or so, and having that support was insane. That was invaluable.
I'm
And
so
that
glad because
carried me
I
through.
can only ever talk on my page about obviously my experiences, but what I like to do with the podcast is get different. So, like that's my way is not the only way.
Yeah,
And
like
actually, I would have probably much preferred to do something like that.
yeah, like
but
I was
didn't
too
know
scared
what
to
was.
go to AA.
I didn't know what was out there.
Yeah,
You know.
I was petrified to go to AA. I didn't want people to. I didn't want to go to one in my area. Don't get me wrong. I have tried a couple of meetings, but I got quite scared. But you know, for me, working one on one with someone was great because it was a way for me to obviously pay attention to my addiction and obviously get on top of it, but also do it in a way that was something that my brain could actually process and handle. Because
Yeah.
AA for me was admitting that I was an alcoholic, that I was an addict, and that I had all of these problems. Whereas one on one, it was a lot softer, and that's what I really needed. But all of that being said, you know, I have almost been 2 years sober, which is something that I'm really proud of.
Amazing.
But as you said, you know, the work doesn't actually start when you get sober. The work starts when life gets really fucking hard and you don't have your coping mechanism.
Yeah.
And you know, I would say in the last 3 or 4 months is where I've seen the most growth.
I have this fear sits in my head at the moment of like, at the moment, I'm in that pink cloud. Everything's great. I've had a few between month 4 and 5. I was like, yeah. But I haven't really had anything. Life hasn't gone bad yet.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not delusional. I like to be a bit delulu, but I'm not delusional in knowing that big fucking things are on the horizon. Like, you know, I've still got both my parents, for example. And I'm like, yeah, it scares me. Like, like life things that happen to everyone, but and then in the same breath, I'm like, God, just be fucking happy. Whilst it's good, because you know life goes like this. And I've never had a happy era, and I'm like, just fucking enjoy it. Don't preempt the bad shit. But at the same time, being an addict, I do think like,
you worry and you do catastrophize.
I know my addict brain will love the excuse of something if something bad goes wrong in my life.
Like, oh yeah, I can just fucking.
Everyone will understand if you use on that.
Yeah. No, I get that.
And I already know it's there.
Yeah, it's there.
It's sitting there waiting.
We all have it, trust me.
Sitting there doing press ups, waiting to just. Oh, your dog did a poo in the house. It could be as you know, minor as that. Or
a bad day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when's that bad day going to come and test me?
I know, but the problem with always thinking like that is then you start to like you're almost
preempt
giving yourself permission at this stage to fuck up when things do go bad, whereas one day at a time.
So true, and I think it's also just normal, you know, to
so normal.
Be aware of it. Good to be aware of it. In the early stages, I was like, what do you do now for fun? Lots of people seem to think that being sober is boring. My thoughts on that is that if you're looking at it and you're thinking you're missing out on the drinking over the other, you've got to start your self-discovery, because that will take up a lot of your time.
Yeah. So what I do now for fun, so I actually do a range of things. So I really enjoy being outdoors. That's obviously like a standard one for me. So paddleboarding, love that. Recently got a paddleboard as well, which is very exciting. Trying new hobbies, that's something that I did a lot of in my early sobriety days. Honestly, the amount of money I fucking spent on trying new hobbies is insane. You know, maybe this is also an ADHD thing, but like, finding something that you're interested in, spending hundreds of pounds, and then losing interest after like, you know, a couple of goes.
That is
like, okay, done now, next thing. Honestly, I've tried rollerblading.
Okay.
I tried it once and realised then how hilly my area was. So then obviously just put them in the shed and forgot about them for a year, even though I'd obviously went and bought like a really nice, fancy, expensive pair.
Of course you did.
Yeah. Pole dancing, that was another one.
Okay.
Got really into that. Obviously had to then go and buy all of the gear and a pole. And that lasted, I think, for maybe 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And then obviously I got over that. And then my latest obsession has been the gym. So
just being sober literally gives me dopamine. Like I can't, because like, and going and walking the dog and being like the sun's shining and the landscape looks stunning, that gives me like a high. It's like, oh my God, look at the world.
No, I know, I fucking get like that all the time. Like sometimes I'll do like really early morning dog walks in the middle of a forest and I can see like the way that the sun is shining through the trees and, you know, there's no one for miles. I can hear the birds chirping and, you know, I look at it and I just think, fuck, that is so. And something that I've done continuously throughout my sobriety journey is every day I write down 3 things I'm grateful for.
Same.
3 things I'm grateful for. It doesn't have to be long. Such an important practice to keep me sober,
Mm.
because every day I can always find things to be grateful for, and that's given me such a positive outlook on life.
It's funny because at the start of my recovery, when my sponsor had advised me to do this gratitude thing, I'm alive first and foremost, yeah, but I didn't think I had anything to be grateful for. I was like, pity party, victim mode.
Yeah.
It's like, no, you don't have cancer.
Yeah.
You're not on ICU.
Yeah.
Like, you can walk with both your legs. You will always find something to be grateful for. And yeah, I think that's it's interesting that seems to be a common thread of
Yeah,
people
it's a
here, so
huge thread. And it's something that I really try to live by. And if you're not grateful for what you've got, then how can you want more?
Mm.
That's what I try and live by anyway.
Mm. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been amazing. I love this chat.
I know, it's actually been really fun.
It's like therapy.
I know, it's
Just the
great.
best. Is there anything we missed?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, well, thank you for being a Class A person.
Well.
Loved it.